When a billionaire stops you at the elevator and takes your hand in front of everyone who ever ignored you, your life doesn't just change, it detonates. Adrian Cross thought he was invisible, a single father grinding through 16-hour days while his coworkers stole his work and his boss pretended he didn't exist. But the woman who just grabbed his hand in front of Miami's entire financial elite, she'd been watching him for months. She knew everything, and what she was about to do would either save him or destroy what little stability he had left. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The gala was the kind of event where people measured their worth by proximity to power. Crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than Adrian's annual salary hung from vaulted ceilings, casting fractured light across marble floors so polished you could see your failures reflected back at you. Men in custom suits that fit like second skins stood in tight clusters, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, performing the elaborate theater of being important. Adrian Cross stood near the bar, nursing a gin and tonic he'd been holding for 20 minutes, watching the whole performance with the detached observation of someone who'd learned to be a ghost in expensive rooms. He was 32 years old, and he looked tired in ways that had nothing to do with sleep. The suit he wore was good. He'd bought it 3 years ago for another event like this, back when he still thought showing up mattered. But it didn't fit quite right anymore. He'd lost weight, not the intentional kind from gym memberships and meal prep, but the slow erosion that comes from skipping lunch because you're buried in spreadsheets, from standing at the kitchen counter, eating whatever's fastest while your kids do homework at the table behind you. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, already knowing what he'd see. Marissa, neighbor. Just put them down. Emma asked for you. Told her you'd be home soon. Adrian typed back quickly. Thanks. Be there by 10. He glanced at his watch. 8:47 p.m. He could probably slip out now. No one would notice. No one had noticed him arrive. Adrian. He turned to find Todd Markham standing beside him, expensive scotch in hand, that practiced smile already in place. Todd was a senior VP at the firm, the kind of guy who'd perfected the art of taking credit for other people's work while making it look like leadership. Didn't expect to see you here, Todd said. And there was something in his tone, not quite surprise, not quite condescension, but somewhere in that space between them. Got the invitation same as everyone else, Adrian said evenly. Right. Of course. Todd took a sip of his drink, eyes scanning the room even while he was talking. You here with anyone? No. Ah. Todd nodded slowly, like this confirmed something. Yeah, these things are tough solo, expensive too. I mean, the tickets alone, I know what the tickets cost, Todd. Sure, just saying. He paused and Adrian could see him weighing whether to continue. He did. Look, I wanted to mention the Vandermeer analysis you put together last week. Really solid work. Adrian said nothing, just waited. We ended up presenting it to the client yesterday. Went over really well. They were impressed. Who presented it? Adrian asked quietly. Todd's smile flickered, just for a second. Well, the team. You know how these things work. It's collaborative. I worked on that analysis for 6 weeks, alone. You told me it was exploratory, that nobody else was going to see it. Come on, Adrian, don't be like that. This is how the industry works. You contribute to the team presents to the client. Rising tide lifts all boats. Whose boat got lifted, Todd? The smile was gone now. I'm not doing this with you. Not here. Doing what? Having a conversation about who actually does the work? Todd leaned in slightly, voice dropping. You want some advice? This attitude right here? This is why you're still at your level while other people are moving up. It's not always about being the smartest guy in the room, Adrian. Sometimes it's about knowing how to play the game. Adrian felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger. He'd been angry at the firm for years, and anger was exhausting. This was something quieter. Something like resignation mixed with a clarity he'd been avoiding. I need to go, he said. Party's just getting started. I have kids at home. Todd's expression shifted into something that might have been sympathy if it weren't so performative. Right, the single dad thing. That's tough, man. Really. But, he gestured vaguely at the room full of people networking, connecting, building the relationships that would determine who got promoted and who stayed stuck. You can't build a career from the sidelines. At some point, you have to ask yourself what you're prioritizing. Adrian looked at him for a long moment. I know exactly what I'm prioritizing. He turned and started walking toward the exit, weaving through clusters of people who didn't see him. He'd gotten maybe 10 feet when he heard someone call his name. Not Todd this time, but Marcus Chen, one of the junior analysts who'd started the same year as Adrian and was now somehow 3 levels above him. Hey, Adrian, hold up. Adrian stopped, turned. Marcus was walking over with 2 other guys from the firm, all of them flushed with the particular energy that comes from an open bar and good news. Dude, did you hear about the Cordova account? Marcus said, grinning. No. We landed it. Full portfolio restructuring, 5-year contract. Mitchell's calling it the biggest win of the quarter. Adrian felt something twist in his stomach. The Cordova account. Yeah. You worked on the preliminary analysis for that, right? Back in, March? February. I spent 2 months building the risk assessment model. Right. Well, it paid off, man. This is huge for the firm. One of the other guys, Adrian didn't remember his name, chimed in. Mitchell said the model was a game changer in the pitch. Client loved it. Who presented? Adrian asked, already knowing the answer. Marcus hesitated, just for a second. Mitchell took the lead. Todd supported. It was a team effort, though. A team effort. Look, I get it, Marcus said, and his voice had that careful tone people use when they're about to say something they think is generous but is actually just insulting. I know you put in a lot of work on the back end. That matters. It all matters. But the reality is, not everyone's built for the client-facing stuff. Some people are better in the engine room, you know? That's not a bad thing. Adrian stared at him. I'm good with clients, Marcus. Sure, yeah, I just mean you've got other priorities, the kids, all that. It makes sense that you'd focus on the technical side. The third guy jumped in, trying to smooth things over. What Marcus means is everyone has their lane. You're solid in yours. My lane, Adrian repeated. Don't take it wrong, man. We all respect what you do. Adrian wanted to laugh, but it would have come out wrong, too sharp, too bitter. These people didn't respect what he did. They respected what he let them take. I need to get home, he said. Yeah, of course. Hey, we should grab drinks sometime, catch up. Sure. He turned again and headed for the elevator, moving faster now, just wanting to be out of this room full of people who saw right through him. He pressed the button and waited, watching the numbers descend. 7th floor, 5th, 3rd. His phone buzzed again. Astra. Still thinking about your breakdown of the behavioral finance piece. You were right. Most people miss the psychological component entirely. They treat market irrationality like it's a bug instead of a fundamental feature. Adrian felt something loosen in his chest. He'd been exchanging messages with Astra for 4 months now, mostly on an anonymous finance forum where people actually cared about ideas more than titles. She was brilliant, probably the sharpest analytical mind he'd encountered outside of academic journals. They'd started debating about efficient market theory, then moved into conversations about risk modeling, behavioral economics, the mathematics of uncertainty. He'd never met her in person, didn't know her real name, where she worked, what she looked like, and somehow that made it easier. She saw his ideas clearly because there was nothing else to see. No tired face, no cheap suit, no single father limitations, just thoughts, just intelligence meeting intelligence. He typed back, people want markets to be rational because irrational systems are harder to predict. But the unpredictability is what creates opportunity. You just have to be willing to see what everyone else is ignoring. The elevator dinged. Doors opened. Adrian stepped inside and pressed the button for the lobby. Astra. Exactly. The invisible edges are where the real value hides. He was about to respond when he heard a voice from the hallway. Hold the elevator, please. Adrian stuck his hand out automatically, triggering the sensor. The doors bounced back open, and that's when his life split into before and after. The woman who stepped into the elevator was the kind of person who changed the air pressure in a room just by existing. She was maybe 5'8" in heels that probably cost more than his rent, wearing a black dress that was somehow both simple and devastating, the kind of thing that looked effortless but absolutely wasn't. Dark hair pulled back in a way that emphasized the sharp intelligence in her eyes. Mid-30s, maybe younger. The kind of beautiful that came with power, or maybe the kind of power that made beauty irrelevant. Adrian recognized her immediately because everyone in finance recognized Celine Vale, founder and CEO of Vale Capital. 30 years old and already managing a portfolio worth somewhere in the range of $40 billion. She'd started with a small inheritance from her grandfather and turned it into one of the most influential investment groups in the world through a combination of aggressive risk-taking and analytical precision that bordered on clairvoyant. She was also notoriously private, rarely gave interviews, never attended events like this. Except apparently she did, because she was standing 3 feet away from him in an elevator. Adrian stepped back to give her space. She moved to the opposite side of the elevator, pressed the lobby button even though it was already lit, and stood perfectly still, looking straight ahead. The doors closed. The elevator began its descent. Silence. Adrian's heart was doing something complicated. It wasn't attraction, or not just attraction. It was more like the feeling you get when you're suddenly in the presence of someone who exists on a completely different frequency than the rest of the world. Someone whose choices ripple outward in ways most people will never experience. He glanced at her peripherally. She was looking at her phone, scrolling through something with the focused intensity of someone who was never really off the clock. The elevator passed the 6th floor. 5th. Say something, a voice in his head suggested. Don't say anything, another voice countered immediately. You're nobody to her. She probably doesn't even know you're here. 4th floor. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and something shifted in her expression. Not quite a smile, but something close. Her thumbs moved across the screen quickly, typing something. Adrian's pocket buzzed. He froze. No. He pulled out his phone slowly, already knowing what he'd see, but needing to confirm it anyway. Astra. The invisible edges are where the real value hides. I like that. It's true in more context than just markets. Adrian stared at the message, then at Celine, then at the message again. The elevator dinged, 2nd floor. He looked up. Celine was watching him now, phone still in her hand, and there was something in her expression that was both terrifying and electrifying. You're Adrian Cross, she said. It wasn't a question. His mouth was dry. Yes. I'm Celine. I know. I know you know. A pause. The question is whether you've figured out the rest yet. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. Neither of them moved. Astra, Adrian said quietly. She smiled then. A real smile, not the polished corporate version. I was wondering if you'd put it together before or after I introduced myself. How long have you known? That you're Adrian Cross? About 6 weeks. You mentioned the Cordova risk assessment in one of our conversations. Very specific piece of work. I made some calls, found out who built the model. She tilted her head slightly. You're better than your position suggests. You looked into me. I look into everyone I find interesting. She stepped out of the elevator, turned back. Are you leaving? Adrian's brain was moving through about 7 different thoughts simultaneously. This was Astra, the woman he'd been talking to for months. The woman whose mind he'd come to respect more than almost anyone he'd encountered professionally. And she was Celine Vale, billionaire, one of the most powerful people in the industry, and she'd just asked if he was leaving. I was, he said. Change your mind. Walk with me. It wasn't really a request. She was already moving back toward the ballroom, and Adrian found himself following before he'd consciously decided to do so. They walked through the lobby, and then Celine did something that made Adrian's stomach drop. Instead of heading toward some quiet corner or private room, she walked directly back into the ballroom, the main floor, where everyone could see them. And she didn't just walk. She took his hand. The effect was immediate. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. Adrian felt the weight of maybe 200 pairs of eyes landing on him, watching Celine fucking Vale, walk across the room holding hands with the guy from the office who usually left these things early to get home to his kids. Todd Markham's face went pale. Mitchell Chen, the managing director, actually took a step forward like he was going to intercept them, then seemed to think better of it. Celine led Adrian to one of the quieter sections near the windows overlooking the city. Only when they were away from the densest clusters of people did she let go of his hand. Why did you do that? Adrian asked, voice low. Do what? You know what. She looked at him directly. You've spent months being invisible to those people. I thought it might be interesting to see what happens when you're suddenly visible. Interesting for who? Both of us. She glanced back at the room, where people were still staring, still trying to make sense of what they'd just witnessed. They're going to treat you differently now, tomorrow, next week. They'll wonder what our relationship is, whether they missed something important, whether you have access or influence they didn't account for. I don't want that. Don't you? She turned back to him. You've been producing exceptional work for years and getting nothing for it. No recognition, no advancement, no respect. Now they'll notice. They'll have to. Because they think I know you. Because they know you know me. There's a difference. She paused. Tell me something. In all our conversations, did you ever lie to me? No. Did you ever exaggerate your expertise or pretend to know something you didn't? No. That's rare. Most people can't help themselves. They need to seem impressive, so they inflate, they posture, they perform. She smiled slightly. You just talked about the work, the ideas. Like the person on the other end was someone who'd see through bullshit anyway, so why bother? I thought you were a grad student or something. Someone who cared about the concepts. I am someone who cares about the concepts. I'm also someone who has $40 billion to deploy based on those concepts. She gestured subtly toward the room behind them. Most of the people here don't understand the difference between intelligence and credentialing. They see your lack of title and assume lack of capability. They're wrong. But they won't realize they're wrong until someone they respect tells them to look again. So this is charity. No, this is pattern recognition. Celine's voice was calm, matter of fact. I've built my career on finding asymmetries, places where perceived value and actual value don't match. You're an asymmetry, Adrian, a meaningful one. Adrian felt something complicated happening in his chest. Part of him wanted to believe her. Part of him knew better than to trust powerful people who showed sudden interest. What do you want from me? He asked. Right now? A conversation. We've been having them for months. I'd like to continue just without the anonymity. And later? Later depends on what happens now. She glanced at her phone briefly. I have about 20 minutes before I need to leave. Tell me about your kids. The shift in topic was so abrupt it took Adrian a second to adjust. My kids? You mentioned them once. 3 children, I think. You were explaining why you couldn't take a call after 8 p.m. Emma's 9. The twins, Marcus and Sophie, just turned 6. Their mother? Not in the picture. She left when the twins were 2 months old. He said it flatly, the way he always did, because emotion made people uncomfortable, and he'd learned not to make things harder than they already were. Celine's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes did. That's a lot. It's what it is. You're doing it alone. I have some help. Neighbor watches them when I have to work late. But yeah, mostly alone. And you're still doing the work you do at the firm. The work is the easy part, Adrian said, and realized as he said it that it was true. Numbers make sense. Markets make sense, even when they're irrational. There's logic to the irrationality. Kids are harder. They want things I can't always give them. Time, mostly. Attention. You feel guilty. Every single day. Celine was quiet for a moment, then, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear it clearly. The people who took credit for your Cordova work, they have nannies, housekeepers, assistants who manage their lives so they can focus on performing competence at events like this. You're building financial models at midnight after putting 3 kids to bed and still producing work better than theirs. That's not a disadvantage. That's evidence of capacity they don't have. Doesn't feel like capacity when I'm missing Emma's school play because I'm stuck in a meeting for a project someone else is going to present. Then stop missing the plays. I need the job. You need a job. Not necessarily that one. She checked her phone again. I have to go. But I want to continue this conversation. Are you free for coffee this week? Adrian's brain was still trying to process the last 3 minutes. Coffee. Or lunch. Dinner, if you can get coverage for the kids. Why? Because I think you're interesting. Because our conversations have been the most intellectually engaging part of my week for the last 4 months. Because I'm curious what it would look like if someone with your analytical capability actually had resources and support. She pulled out her phone, handed it to him. Put your number in. He did, fingers moving on autopilot. She took the phone back, Sent him a text immediately. "So you have mine." "I'll reach out tomorrow," she said. "We'll find a time." And then she walked away, leaving Adrian standing alone near the windows while the entire ballroom tried very hard to pretend they weren't staring at him. He stood there for maybe 30 seconds, phone in his hand, brain attempting to compile what had just happened into something coherent. Then Todd Markham appeared at his elbow. "Adrian, hey, can we talk for a second?" Adrian turned slowly. Todd's expression was different now, still calculated but recalibrated. He looked like a man who'd just realized he'd made a significant miscalculation and was trying to figure out how to correct it. "What's up, Todd?" "I just wanted to look about earlier. I think maybe I came across wrong. This Cordova thing, the Vandermeer analysis. I want to make sure you're getting proper recognition for your contributions." Adrian stared at him. 30 minutes ago, you told me I needed to learn how to play the game." "I was talking about visibility, collaboration. I didn't mean—" "You meant exactly what you said, Todd. Come on, don't be like that. We're on the same team here." "Are we?" Mitchell Chen materialized on Adrian's other side, managing director smile in place. "Adrian, good to see you. Didn't realize you knew Celine Vale." "I didn't until tonight." "But you do now." "Apparently." Mitchell and Todd exchanged a glance. Mitchell cleared his throat. "Listen, we should probably set up some time to talk. About your trajectory at the firm. About opportunities." "Opportunities," Adrian repeated. "We've been thinking about expanding the quant team. Someone with your background, your skill set. There could be a place for you in a more prominent role." "You've been thinking about this?" "For a while now, yes." "Since when?" "Since 20 minutes ago?" Mitchell's smile tightened. "I understand you might feel overlooked. That's on us. We should have done a better job recognizing your value. But that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm saying there's room for growth here if you want it." Adrian looked at both of them. Todd with his recalculated expression, Mitchell with his managing director's smile, and felt something crystallize inside him. These people didn't see him. They saw Celine Vale's hand in his. "I need to get home to my kids," he said. Of course. But let's definitely talk this week. Maybe lunch?" "Maybe." He walked away before either of them could say anything else, heading for the elevator again. This time, nobody stopped him. On the ride down, he pulled out his phone and looked at the text Celine had sent. Then he opened his conversation with Marissa, his neighbor. "Adrian, on my way. Be there in 20. Marissa, "No rush, they're sleeping. Emma wanted me to tell you she finished her science project." Adrian, "Thanks, really, I owe you." Marissa, "You don't owe me anything. Get home safe." The elevator opened into the lobby. Adrian walked out into the Miami heat, humid air hitting him like a wall after the air-conditioned precision of the ballroom. His car was parked 3 blocks away. He'd walked rather than pay for valet because $40 was $40, and money had a different weight when you were feeding 3 kids on a budget that involved a lot of generic brand cereal and planning meals 2 weeks in advance. He walked slowly, letting his brain settle. The night felt different than it had 2 hours ago. Heavier. Stranger. Like reality had shifted slightly to the left and he was still trying to find his balance. Celine Vale was Astra. The anonymous person he'd been talking to for months, the person whose intelligence he respected more than almost anyone in the industry, was one of the most powerful women in finance, and she'd taken his hand in front of everyone who'd spent years pretending he didn't exist. Adrian unlocked his car, got in, started the engine. The AC sputtered to life, blowing lukewarm air that would eventually get cold if he gave it enough time. His phone buzzed. "Unknown number. This is Celine. Confirming you have my contact. Also, those people at the firm who are suddenly interested in your career? They're not worth the effort, but we'll talk about that later. Get home to your kids." Adrian read the message twice, then 3 times. Then he put the car in drive and headed home, where 3 children were sleeping in a 2-bedroom apartment, and life was exactly as complicated as it had been 6 hours ago. Except now something had changed in a way he couldn't quite name yet. The next morning started the way every morning started. Chaos barely contained. Emma couldn't find her science textbook. Marcus had somehow gotten toothpaste in his hair. Sophie refused to wear anything except her purple dress, which was in the laundry because she'd worn it 3 days in a row already. Adrian moved through the apartment like a conductor managing an orchestra where nobody could read music and half the instruments were on fire. Emma, it's under your bed. Marcus, just hold still. Sophie, you can wear the purple dress, but you're wearing a sweater over it because it's 60 degrees outside. It's not under my bed. It is, I can see it from here. This is toothpaste hair now. This is my life. Dad, the purple dress is my favorite. I know. That's why you've worn it 70 times. Sweater. He got them dressed, fed, and out the door with approximately 90 seconds to spare before they'd be late for school. The morning drop-off was its own choreography. Elementary school first for Emma, then the daycare that doubled as pre-K for the twins. Emma hugged him before getting out of the car. Love you, Dad. Love you too, Em. Tell Mrs. Patterson I'll email her about the field trip. You forgot? I didn't forget. I'm going to email her. Today? Yes, today. She looked skeptical but nodded and headed toward the building, backpack almost as big as she was. The twins were easier. They were at the age where everything was a game and nothing was a crisis unless it involved lost toys or denied cookies. Be good, Adrian told them as they scrambled out. We're always good, Sophie said seriously. Sure you are. Mostly good, Marcus amended. That's more accurate. He watched them disappear into the daycare, waited until he saw them wave from the window, then pulled back into traffic and headed toward the office. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered on Bluetooth. Adrian Cross? Mr. Cross? This is Jennifer Wu from HR. Mr. Chen would like to see you when you get in. Do you have time around 9? Adrian glanced at the clock. 8:47 a.m. Sure. Great. I'll put you on his calendar. Conference room C. She hung up before he could ask what it was about. Adrian felt something tighten in his chest. Mitchell Chen didn't schedule morning meetings through HR unless it was serious. Good serious or bad serious remained to be seen. He got to the office at 8:55, dropped his bag at his desk, grabbed coffee from the break room that tasted like it had been brewed sometime yesterday, and headed to conference room C. Mitchell was already there along with Todd Markham and Sarah Brennan, the firm's COO. This wasn't a casual conversation. Adrian, thanks for coming, Mitchell said, gesturing to a chair. Coffee? I'm good. Great. So we wanted to follow up on our conversation last night about your role here, opportunities for growth, that kind of thing. Adrian sat down, said nothing. Sarah jumped in. We've been reviewing your work over the past year, really over the past several years, and we're impressed. The Cordova model, the Vandermeer analysis, the risk assessment work you did for the Patterson account, it's all top tier. Thank you. We haven't done a great job of acknowledging that publicly, Mitchell continued. That's on us. Leadership should be better about recognizing contributions, especially from people who aren't necessarily vocal about self-promotion. Okay, Todd leaned forward. Here's the thing, Adrian. The firm is growing. We're taking on bigger clients, more complex projects. We need people we can trust, people with serious analytical chops who can handle sophisticated work. We'd like to offer you a promotion, Sarah said. Senior analyst with a focus on high-value accounts, 20% salary bump, profit sharing, and a real seat at the table when it comes to client strategy. Adrian looked at them. When did you decide this? We've been discussing it for a few weeks, Mitchell said smoothly. Weeks? Yes. Before or after last night? The room got very quiet. Mitchell's expression didn't change. I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm asking a direct question. Did this promotion exist before Celine Vale took my hand in front of everyone? Or did it materialize this morning? Sarah's jaw tightened. Adrian, if you're suggesting... I'm not suggesting. I'm asking. Mitchell held up a hand. Let's keep this professional. Yes, last night's interaction reminded us that we need to be more proactive about retention. But the foundation of this offer is your work, your value to the firm. That hasn't changed. Right. Adrian sat back. And what exactly would the senior analyst position involve? Todd pulled out a folder. We're pitching Vale Capital next month. Full portfolio partnership proposal. We want you to lead the technical analysis. There it was. Adrian felt something cold settle in his stomach. You want me to work on the Vale pitch? You're the best person for it, Todd said. Your modeling work is exactly what they'd value. And given your connection with Ms. Vale, It makes sense to have you in a prominent role. My connection. Look, we're not asking you to do anything inappropriate, Mitchell said carefully. We're just saying that if you have insight into what Vale Capital values, that's useful information. And if your involvement in the pitch demonstrates our commitment to quality, that's good for everyone. Adrian looked at the three of them, Mitchell with his managing director calm, Todd with his calculated enthusiasm, Sarah with her COO efficiency, and understood exactly what was being offered and exactly what it would cost. They wanted to use his relationship with Celine to secure a deal. In exchange, they were offering him money, title, recognition, everything he'd wanted for years. All he had to do was let them turn his integrity into leverage. I need to think about it, he said. Of course, Mitchell said. Take the day. We'll talk tomorrow. Adrian stood up, walked out of the conference room, went back to his desk, and sat there staring at his computer screen without seeing it. His phone buzzed. Celine, how's your morning? He stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, complicated. Yours? Celine, about to get more complicated. Free for lunch? Adrian, where? Celine, I'll send a car. Noon. Adrian, you don't have to send a car. Celine, I know, I'm doing it anyway. Wear comfortable shoes. Adrian had no idea what that meant, but at noon exactly, his phone pinged with a message that a car was waiting outside. He told his manager he was taking lunch, ignored Todd's curious glance, and went downstairs. The car was not subtle. Black SUV, driver in a suit, the kind of vehicle that screamed money in a way that made Adrian deeply uncomfortable. The driver opened the door. Adrian got in. Selena was sitting in the back wearing jeans and a white shirt, somehow looking more intimidating in casual clothes than she had in the gala dress. Where are we going? Adrian asked. Somewhere we can talk without interruption. She nodded to the driver who pulled into traffic. They drove for maybe 20 minutes, leaving downtown, heading toward the coast. Eventually, the car pulled up to a small park overlooking the water, the kind of place that was technically public but empty on a Tuesday afternoon. Celine got out. Adrian followed. They walked along the path in silence for a few minutes. The water was gray-blue, choppy with wind. Seabirds circled overhead, looking for scraps. Your firm offered you a promotion this morning, Celine said finally. Adrian stopped walking. How do you know that? Because it's what I would do if I were them. They saw us together last night. This morning, they're recalculating your value. They want me to work on the Vale Capital pitch. Of course they do. She turned to face him. Let me guess. Senior analyst position, salary bump, more responsibility, and all you have to do is use your relationship with me to help them secure a partnership. Something like that. Are you going to do it? Adrian looked out at the water. I don't know. Yes, you do. How would you know? Because you're the person who spent 4 months talking to me about finance without once trying to figure out who I was so you could leverage the connection. You're not wired for that kind of transaction. I need the money, Celine. I've got 3 kids in a 2-bedroom apartment, and I'm working 60-hour weeks just to keep us stable. If they're offering a 20% raise, they're offering you a 20% raise to compromise yourself. That's not opportunity. That's exploitation with better packaging. Easy to say when you have $40 billion. She didn't flinch. You're right, it is easy for me to say, but that doesn't make it untrue. She started walking again. Adrian fell into step beside her. Tell me something. When you're building a financial model, what's the first thing you do? Define the parameters. Which means? Figure out what actually matters. What drives value, what creates risk, what the real variables are. And what do you do with noise? Strip it out. It obscures the signal. Exactly. She stopped walking again, turned to face him fully. Right now, you're treating your career like there's only one path. Stay at a firm that doesn't value you, take whatever scraps they offer, be grateful for recognition that only came because they think you're useful to them. That's noise, Adrian. It's obscuring the signal. What's the signal? That you're exceptional at what you do. That you've been building sophisticated models while raising 3 kids alone. That your work is better than people who get paid 3 times what you make. That's the signal. Everything else, the title, the politics, whether Todd Markham thinks you're a team player, that's noise. Noise pays the bills. So does signal. You just have to know where to look. She pulled out her phone, pulled up something, handed it to him. This is the compensation structure for a senior analyst at my firm. Not a senior analyst doing grunt work. A senior analyst who's actually solving interesting problems. Adrian looked at the screen. The number made his breath catch. That's more than your firm is offering, by a lot. But it's not charity. It's market rate for someone with your capability who's actually being used at their capacity level. Adrian handed the phone back. You're offering me a job. I'm telling you what exists. Whether you take it is your choice. I don't understand why you're doing this. Yes, you do. You're just not used to people acting on what they see. She put her phone away. I've spent 4 months watching you think, watching you solve problems, challenge assumptions, build arguments that most people in this industry couldn't construct if you gave them a month in a research team. That's valuable. I want valuable people working with me, not against me, and definitely not buried in firms that are too dysfunctional to recognize what they have. This is fast. Markets move fast. People who wait miss opportunities. She paused. But I'm not asking you to decide right now. I'm asking you to think clearly about what your current firm is actually offering versus what they're asking you to trade for it. They walked back to the car in silence. The driver opened the door. Celine got in first. Adrian hesitated, then followed. On the drive back, Celine said, "They're going to pressure you. The firm. They're going to make it seem like this promotion is your one chance, like turning it down means throwing away your career. They'll use your kids, your financial situation, your fear. I need you to see that clearly." I do see it. Then see this too. You have options. You've always had options. You just haven't had anyone tell you that before. The car pulled up outside Adrian's building. He got out, turned back. "Thank you," he said for lunch, for the conversation. "Thank you for not using our relationship as leverage. It's rarer than you'd think." She smiled slightly. "I'll text you later." "Think about what I said." The car pulled away. Adrian stood on the sidewalk for a moment, then went back inside, up the elevator, back to his desk where he had 7 new emails and a spreadsheet that needed to be done by end of day. Todd appeared at his cubicle around 3. "Hey, got a minute?" Adrian saved his work. "Sure." They walked to an empty conference room. Todd closed the door. "So, the promotion, you thinking about it?" "Yeah." Good. Look, I know this morning might have felt transactional. I want you to know it's not. We genuinely value your work here. Always have. Okay? The veil thing, I know how it might seem, but here's the reality. We're trying to build a relationship with one of the biggest investment firms in the world. If you can help us do that, everyone wins. You, me, the firm, the clients we'd be able to serve with that partnership. It's not about using you. It's about leveraging collective strengths. Adrian said nothing. "You've got kids to think about," Todd continued. "Stability, benefits. This promotion comes with better healthcare, 401k matching, the works. That matters when you're a single parent." "It does?" "So why the hesitation?" Adrian looked at him. "Because I've been here for 6 years, Todd. 6 years of doing good work, having it ignored, watching other people get promoted while I stay in place. And suddenly, 12 hours after Celine Vale takes my hand at a party, you're all very interested in my career trajectory. You can call that whatever you want, but we both know what it is." Todd's expression hardened slightly. "You think you're the first person to benefit from a connection? This is how the industry works, Adrian. Relationships matter. If you've got one with Celine Vale, that's an asset. Using assets isn't exploitation, it's strategy." Even if the asset is a person? That's not what I said. It's what you meant. Todd stood up. "Look, I don't know what she's been telling you, but she hasn't been telling me anything. I'm capable of thinking for myself." "Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're about to turn down a life-changing opportunity because of pride." "Maybe it is pride. Or maybe it's knowing the difference between being valued and being used." Todd stared at him for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "You know what your problem is, Adrian? You think the world owes you something because you're smart. It doesn't. Being smart isn't enough. You have to be smart and pragmatic. You have to be willing to do what it takes." "I am willing to do what it takes, just not that." "Then you're going to stay exactly where you are. And in 5 years, you'll still be sitting in that cubicle wondering why everyone else moved past you. Todd left the room. Adrian sat there alone, phone in his pocket, decision crystallizing into something he couldn't quite see yet, but could feel forming, like ice on a window. That night, after the kids were in bed, he sat at the kitchen table with a calculator and a legal pad, running the numbers. Current salary, current expenses, what 20% more would mean, what Celine's offer would mean. The math was clear, but math was only part of the equation. His phone buzzed. Celine, you're still thinking. That's good. Take your time. But don't let fear make the decision. Adrian, how do you know I'm thinking? Celine, because I know how you think. You're building a model right now, running scenarios, trying to quantify risk. Adrian, is that wrong? Celine, no, it's exactly right. Just make sure you're measuring the right variables. Adrian, which are? Celine, what you're building versus what you're trading. Some things don't fit on a spreadsheet. Adrian stared at the message for a long time. Then he looked at the numbers on his legal pad. Then he looked at the door to his kid's bedroom, where 3 people were sleeping who depended entirely on whatever choice he made next. And he started to understand what Celine had been trying to tell him. The signal wasn't about money. It was about what kind of life he was building, and whether that life required him to become smaller, to fit into spaces that were never going to value him anyway. He picked up his phone and typed, I need to talk to you, not about the job, about how you knew. Celine, knew what? Adrian, that I was worth finding. Celine, I'll tell you, but not over text. Tomorrow. Lunch again? Adrian, okay. Celine, wear comfortable shoes. Adrian, you keep saying that. Celine, because where we're going next matters. Adrian put his phone down, turned off the light, and sat in the dark kitchen of his too-small apartment, feeling something shift inside him that didn't have a name yet but felt like the moment before a decision becomes irreversible. Tomorrow, he'd talk to Celine. Tomorrow, he'd figure out what he was actually choosing between. But tonight, in the quiet darkness, with his children sleeping and the numbers still scattered on his legal pad, Adrian Cross allowed himself to consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, being invisible wasn't the cost of survival. Maybe it was just what happened when you let other people decide what you were worth. And maybe it was time to stop letting them. The next morning arrived with the same chaos, but Adrian moved through it differently. He noticed things he usually missed. The way Emma's hair fell across her face when she concentrated on tying her shoes, how Marcus hummed while brushing his teeth, the particular shade of concentration in Sophie's eyes when she picked out her clothes. Small things. Things that mattered more than spreadsheets. Dad, you're staring, Emma said, looking up from her cereal. Just thinking. About what? About how you're getting too tall. Stop growing. She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. That's not how it works. Should be. I should get a vote. Marcus spilled orange juice across the table. Sophie laughed. Adrian grabbed paper towels and cleaned it up without the usual flash of frustration, and Emma gave him a curious look. You're being weird, she said. Weird how? I don't know. Different weird. Good different or bad different? She considered this seriously. Not sure yet. He dropped them at school and daycare, watched them disappear into their respective buildings, then sat in his car for a moment before starting the engine. His phone showed 3 missed calls from the office. He ignored them and drove to a coffee shop 2 blocks from work, ordered something that cost too much, and sat outside in the morning sun waiting for noon. Todd texted at 9:15. Need to finalize the promotion paperwork. Can you stop by when you get in? Adrian didn't respond. Mitchell called at 9:40. Adrian let it go to voicemail. At 10:30, his phone rang again. This time it was Sarah Brennan. He answered. Adrian Cross? Adrian, it's Sarah. Listen, I know you're thinking about the offer, and that's fine, but we need to move on this. The Vail pitch timeline is tight, and if you're going to be part of the team, we need to start prep this week. I haven't decided yet. What's there to decide? We're offering you everything you've been working toward. Are you? There was a pause. I'm not sure I understand the question. I've been working here for 6 years, Sarah. 6 years of good work. Work that won other people promotions. And suddenly, one conversation with Celine Vail. And you're all very interested in my career development. You don't see how that looks? I see how it might feel, but Adrian, this is business. Relationships matter. If you have a connection that benefits the firm, that's valuable. That's how partnerships work. Partnerships where both sides benefit, or partnerships where one side gets used? Her voice cooled. Nobody's using you. We're offering you an opportunity. With conditions. With responsibilities. There's a difference. She paused. Look, I'm going to be direct with you. You're talented. Everyone knows that. But talent alone doesn't move careers forward. You need visibility, relationships, strategic positioning. We're trying to give you that. If you turn this down, you're making a choice about your future here. What kind of choice? The kind that's hard to walk back from. Adrian felt something settle in his chest. Not anger, something colder. Thanks for the clarity, Sarah. So, what's your answer? I'll let you know. He hung up before she could respond. At 11:45, a text came through from an unknown number. Cars outside. David, Celine's driver. Adrian left money on the table, walked to the black SUV idling at the curb, and got in. Celine wasn't there this time, just David, who nodded at him in the rearview mirror and pulled into traffic without saying anything. They drove for 30 minutes, leaving the city entirely this time, heading up the coast toward an area Adrian vaguely recognized as expensive in ways that didn't advertise themselves. Old money neighborhoods, places where the houses were set back from the road behind gates and tropical landscaping. Eventually, David turned onto a private drive that wound through palm trees and flowering bushes before opening up to reveal a house that was somehow both massive and understated. Modern architecture, all clean lines and glass, positioned to overlook the ocean. David parked. She's on the deck, straight through. Adrian got out, walked up to the front door, which was already open. Inside was all white walls and natural light, expensive art that looked like it had been chosen by someone who actually understood it, furniture that managed to be both minimal and comfortable. He walked through the house toward the sound of the ocean, stepped out onto a deck that stretched the width of the building, and found Celine sitting at a table with her laptop open, a phone to her ear, talking in rapid Spanish to someone about currency fluctuations and emerging market exposure. She saw him, held up one finger, finished the conversation, and hung up. Sorry, crisis in Santiago. Sit. Adrian sat. The view was stunning. Endless blue water, white sand, morning light turning everything sharp and clear. This is your house, he said. One of them. I use this one when I need to think without interruption. She closed her laptop. Coffee? Food? David can make anything. I'm fine. You sure? You look like you didn't sleep. I didn't. Much. She studied him for a moment. They called you this morning, multiple times. How do you... He stopped. Right, you would know. I know how these things work. They're applying pressure, making you feel like this is your only chance. She leaned back in her chair. What did they say? That if I turn down the promotion, I'm making a choice about my future. Sarah's exact words. Which means they're threatening you. They didn't use those words. They didn't need to. That's what corporate threat sounds like when it's coming from HR. She picked up her coffee, took a sip. Let me guess. They framed it as concern, as wanting to help you succeed, as giving you an opportunity to finally get the recognition you deserve. Something like that. And all you have to do is compromise yourself to get it. Adrian looked out at the water. A pelican dove, came up empty, circled back for another pass. You said yesterday you'd tell me how you knew, that I was worth finding. I did say that. So tell me. Celine was quiet for a moment. Then she stood up. Walk with me. They went down steps from the deck to the beach, shoes off, walking along the waterline where the sand was firm and cool. The morning was still early enough that the heat hadn't settled in yet, just sun and breeze and the sound of waves. I grew up with money, Celine said after a while. My grandfather made his fortune in manufacturing, real estate, some early tech investments that paid off bigger than anyone expected. By the time I was born, there was enough money that I'd never have to work a day in my life if I didn't want to. But you did. Because money without purpose is just weight. It doesn't mean anything unless you do something with it. She bent down, picked up a shell, examined it, tossed it back into the water. When I was 23, my grandfather died. Left me everything. Not my father. My father had already proven he was better at spending money than making it. But me, $10 million, which doesn't sound like much compared to what I have now, but at 23 it felt like the whole world. What did you do with it? Lost half of it in the first year. She said it matter-of-factly, without shame. Made stupid investments, trusted the wrong advisors, thought being smart was the same as being experienced. It's not. Experience is what you get after you fail enough times to recognize patterns. So you learned. I got obsessed. Spent 2 years doing nothing but studying markets, reading everything I could find, building models, testing theories. I stopped going to parties, stopped maintaining friendships that were based on who my grandfather was. I just worked. And slowly, I started to understand how money actually moves, where the asymmetries hide, what creates value that other people miss. She stopped walking, turned to face the water. By the time I was 27, I'd turned that remaining 5 million into 100 million. By 30, it was 1 billion. Now it's 40-something, depending on the day. That's not an accident. No, it's pattern recognition. It's understanding that most people in this industry are performing competence instead of actually being competent. They've learned the language, the signals, the way to look like they know what they're doing. But when you actually test their thinking, there's nothing there, just noise dressed up as signal. Adrian watched her profile against the light. And you think I'm different? I know you are. I've been watching you think for 4 months, remember? You don't perform. You just solve problems. You don't care if the solution makes you look smart. You care if it's correct. That's rare. Rare enough that when I see it, I pay attention. So you looked into me. I did my research, yes. Found out who you were, where you worked, what your situation was. And the more I learned, the more interested I became. Not just in your analytical capability, but in the fact that you were doing that level of work while raising 3 kids alone, while being systematically overlooked by people who should have known better. Why does that matter to you? Celine turned to look at him directly. Because I've spent 10 years building a firm based on finding value where other people aren't looking. That's my entire strategy. And you, Adrian Cross, are a massive asymmetry. You're someone with world-class capability being paid a fraction of market rate because your current employers are too stupid or too threatened to recognize what they have. So this is business. Everything's business, but that doesn't mean it can't also be personal. She started walking again. You asked me yesterday how I knew you were worth finding. Here's the real answer. I didn't know. I suspected. And suspicion is just a hypothesis that needs testing, so I tested it. I spent 4 months talking to you about ideas, watching how you thought, seeing if the quality of your mind matched the quality of your work. And it did. Better than I expected. And then you showed up at that gala. I was invited months ago. I almost didn't go. I hate those things. But I decided at the last minute that it might be interesting to see you in person, to watch how you moved through a room full of people who didn't see you, to confirm what I already suspected. Which was? That you're invisible because you let yourself be. Not because you lack capability, but because you've accepted a narrative about your value that's based on other people's limitations, not your own. Adrian felt something twist in his chest. That's easy to say when you're you. It is. And you're right to call it out. I have resources you don't have, options you don't have. But here's what I also have. Scars from making the wrong choices early on. From trusting people who saw me as a means to an end. From almost losing everything because I didn't understand the difference between opportunity and exploitation. She stopped walking again. Your firm is offering you exploitation with better packaging. I'm offering you an actual opportunity. But only if you can see the difference clearly enough to choose. And if I choose wrong? Then you spend the next decade building someone else's wealth while they pay you just enough to keep you grateful. Your kids grow up watching you disappear into work that doesn't value you. And eventually, you become exactly what they think you are. Someone who's useful but not essential. Someone who can be replaced the moment the relationship with me goes away. The words hit harder than Adrian expected. He looked down at the sand, at the water washing over his feet, at the shell fragments scattered along the waterline. I can't afford to make the wrong choice, he said quietly. I know. I have 3 kids depending on me. If I burn the bridge at the firm and whatever you're offering doesn't work out, then you'll find another job. You're exceptional, Adrian. The market doesn't stop needing exceptional people just because one opportunity doesn't pan out. She paused. But I understand the fear. Single parent, sole provider, no safety net. The risk calculus is different for you than it is for someone who can afford to fail. So what do I do? You decide what you're optimizing for, security or growth, playing it safe or building something real. There's no wrong answer, just different costs. They walked back toward the house in silence. When they reached the deck, Celine gestured to the table where lunch had appeared at some point. Sandwiches, fruit, water, with lemon slices floating in a glass pitcher. Eat something, she said. You look like you've been running on coffee and stress. Adrian sat down, took a sandwich without really tasting it. Celine watched him with that same analytical intensity she brought to everything. Tell me about your kids, she said after a while. Why? Because they're part of the equation. I want to understand what you're actually weighing. Adrian put down the sandwich. Emma's 9. She's smart, scary smart sometimes. Reads at a 12th grade level, wants to be a marine biologist or a lawyer depending on the day. She's also the one who holds everything together when I'm not there. Takes care of the twins, makes sure homework gets done, remembers things I forget. She shouldn't have to do that. She should just get to be 9. But she does it anyway, because someone has to, and she's figured out that someone is her. He picked at the crust of his sandwich. The twins are different. Marcus is all energy. He doesn't walk anywhere. He runs, talks constantly, wants to know how everything works. Sophie's quieter, more watchful. She notices things. Feelings, mostly. If I'm stressed, she knows before I say anything. She'll just come sit next to me without talking, like she's trying to absorb some of it. Sounds like you. Maybe. I don't know. He looked up at Celine. Their mother left when they were 2 months old. Just walked out one morning and never came back. No explanation, no contact since. Emma remembers her a little. The twins don't remember her at all. That's a lot to carry. It's what it is. I don't have the luxury of falling apart about it. They need stability, routine, someone who shows up every single day. So that's what I do. I show up. Even when it costs you. Especially then. Celine was quiet for a moment. My mother left too. Not the same way. She didn't abandon us. But she checked out emotionally when I was about Emma's age. Depression, pills, whatever she needed to not feel things. My father was too busy with his own problems to notice, so my grandfather raised me, taught me everything that mattered. I'm sorry. Don't be. It made me who I am. Just like what you're going through is making Emma who she'll become. The question is whether you're building a life that shows her strength looks like suffering, or strength looks like choosing better even when it's hard. Adrian felt that land somewhere deep. You think I'm choosing to suffer. I think you're choosing safety over possibility because you're afraid, which is human, but it's not strategic. What would be strategic? Taking the risk that actually builds the life you want instead of just maintaining the life you have. She leaned forward slightly. Here's what I'm offering, clearly and specifically. Senior analyst position at Vail Capital. Base salary is $240,000. Bonus structure tied to performance. Conservatively, another $100,000 annually if you're doing the work I think you're capable of. Health insurance that actually covers things. Childcare stipend, flexible schedule, so you can be there for your kids when it matters. And most importantly, work that uses your full capability, not just the parts that are convenient for someone else's advancement. The numbers made Adrian's breath catch. That was more than triple what he made now. That was private school if the kids needed it. That was moving out of the cramped apartment. That was breathing room he hadn't had in 6 years. Why would you pay me that much? Because that's what you're worth. And because paying people properly is cheaper than replacing them when they figure out they're being underpaid. She sat back. But it's not charity. I expect output. I expect you to challenge me when you think I'm wrong. I expect you to build models and analyses that are better than what I can get anywhere else. If you can't do that, the job goes away. Clear? Clear. So what's your answer? Adrian looked at her. This woman who'd spent months talking to him anonymously, who'd looked into him, who'd shown up at a gala and changed his life in one gesture. He thought about Todd's office, about Mitchell's managed smile, about Sarah's polite threats. He thought about Emma asking why he was being different weird. He thought about the legal pad on his kitchen table covered in calculations that only measured half of what mattered. "I need 24 hours, he said. Celine nodded. "Fair, but know this. Your firm is going to keep pushing. They're going to make it seem like turning down their offer is career suicide. They might even threaten to fire you if they think you're seriously considering leaving. Don't let them bully you into deciding out of fear. And if they do fire me, then they're proving my point about what you're worth to them. And you'll land somewhere better." She stood up. "David will drive you back. Think about it clearly. Not emotionally, not out of fear, but strategically. What builds the life you actually want?" Adrian stood too. "Thank you for the offer, for the honesty. Thank me by making the choice that's right for you, whatever that is." The drive back was quiet. Adrian stared out the window, watching the expensive neighborhoods give way to commercial districts, then to the downtown area where his office building sat among a dozen others that looked exactly the same. David pulled up to the curb. "Good luck," he said, and there was something in his tone that suggested he knew more about what Adrian was dealing with than his job description required. Adrian went upstairs, walked through the office to his desk, and found Todd waiting for him. "We need to talk," Todd said. "Not a request." They went to the same conference room as yesterday. This time, it was just the two of them. Todd closed the door, didn't sit down. "Where were you?" "Lunch? For 3 hours? I had things to think about." "Things to think about, right." Todd crossed his arms. "Mitchell's pissed, Adrian. Sarah's pissed. We gave you an opportunity and you're acting like we did something wrong." "You did." "How?" "By offering you a promotion? By recognizing your value? By only recognizing it after you thought I could get you something you wanted." Todd's jaw tightened. "You know what? I'm done playing nice. Here's the reality. You turn down this promotion, you're making an enemy of everyone who matters at this firm. And in case you've forgotten, this industry is small. People talk. You think you're going to walk into some other position if you burn us? You think Celine Vale is going to save you? I think I'm going to make a decision based on what's best for me and my kids, not based on what's convenient for you." "Your kids." "Right." Todd leaned against the table. "Let me tell you about your kids, Adrian. They need stability. They need a father who has a job, health insurance, a future. You walk away from this firm, you're gambling with their security. Is that what a good father does?" Something cold settled over Adrian. "Don't talk about my kids. Someone needs to, because you're about to make a choice that hurts them based on pride, based on principle." "Same thing, and principles don't pay rent." Todd moved toward the door, stopped with his hand on the handle. "You've got until tomorrow morning. After that, the offer disappears. And so does your position here. We'll find a reason. Restructuring, performance issues, whatever we need. But you'll be gone. Think about that when you're tucking your kids in tonight." He left. Adrian sat in the empty conference room for a long time, phone in his pocket, decision crystallizing into something sharp and clear and terrifying. They were threatening him. Not subtly, not with corporate language. Actually threatening him. Which meant Celine had been right about everything. He pulled out his phone, looked at her number, typed a message. "They just threatened to fire me if I don't accept by tomorrow morning." The response came 30 seconds later. "Do you want me to make a call?" "No. You sure? I can make this go away." "I'm sure. I need to handle this myself." "Okay. But the offer stands regardless of what happens tomorrow. You're not alone in this." Adrian stared at that last sentence for a long time. "You're not alone in this." When had anyone last said that to him? When had anyone last meant it? He went back to his desk, opened his computer, and started drafting an email. Not to Todd, not to Mitchell, to himself. A list of everything he'd contributed to the firm over the last 6 years. Every model, every analysis, every project that had led to deals he never got credit for. The list was long. The value was undeniable, and none of it had mattered until someone from outside told them to look. At 5:30, he packed up his things and left. Marcus Chen called out to him as he passed. "Hey, Adrian, you good?" "Yeah, why?" "Just, Todd seemed intense earlier. Wanted to make sure everything was okay." Adrian looked at Marcus, this guy who'd started the same time as him and was now 3 levels higher, who'd called him solid in his lane like it was a compliment, who genuinely didn't understand that the lane he'd been put in wasn't the one he belonged in. "Everything's fine," Adrian said. "I'm just figuring some things out." "Cool, let me know if you need anything." "I will." He drove to pick up the kids, went through the evening routine, homework, dinner, bath time, bedtime stories, with a clarity he hadn't felt in months. He wasn't distracted, wasn't half present. He was there, fully there, because he understood now that being there was the point. After they were asleep, he sat at the kitchen table with his phone and his legal pad, and the decision that had already been made, just waiting for him to acknowledge it. He called Celine. She answered on the first ring. "Talk to me." "I'm taking the job." "You're sure?" "Yes." "What changed?" "Todd threatened to fire me if I didn't accept their offer, used my kids as leverage, told me principals don't pay rent." "He's right about that last part. They don't." "No. But they're the difference between building a life and just surviving one, and I'm done just surviving." Celine was quiet for a moment. "Okay, here's what happens next. Tomorrow morning, you go into that office and you tell Mitchell and Todd that you're declining their offer and resigning effective immediately. Don't negotiate, don't explain, just make it clear and simple. Can you do that?" "Yes." "They're going to try to make you feel small, like you're making a mistake. Don't engage. Just deliver the message and leave." "What about notice? 2 weeks?" "They don't deserve 2 weeks. They've had 6 years of your best work and gave you nothing until they thought they could use you. You don't owe them transition time." "What if they try to block me? Non-compete clause or something?" "Your employment contract is standard. I already had my legal team review it. There's nothing that would prevent you from working for me. If they try to claim otherwise, we'll bury them in litigation they can't afford." Adrian felt something shift in his chest. Not relief exactly. More like the moment before a jump, when you've already committed but haven't left the ground yet. "When do I start?" "Monday. That gives you the weekend to decompress and get things organized. I'll have HR send over the paperwork tomorrow afternoon. Sign it, send it back, and we're done." "Celine." "Yeah?" "Thank you for seeing me when nobody else did." "Thank you for being worth seeing. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be hard, but you'll get through it. And on the other side, there's work that actually matters." She hung up. Adrian sat in the quiet kitchen, phone on the table, decision made, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate kind that comes from wishing things were different. The real kind that comes from knowing you're moving towards something better and having the courage to actually take the step. He looked at the list of projects he'd written earlier. All that work, all that value, all those years of being overlooked. And tomorrow, he was going to walk away from it. Tomorrow, he was going to choose himself. He went to bed and slept better than he had in months. Morning came too fast and too slow at the same time. The kids sensed something was different. Emma, especially, watching him with those careful eyes that missed nothing. "You're nervous?" she said over breakfast. "A little." "About what?" "About something I have to do today." "Is it bad?" "No, it's good, but it's scary." "Why is it scary if it's good?" Adrian looked at his daughter, 9 years old and already understanding that the hard things were often the important things. Because changing your life is always scary, even when it's right. She thought about this. "Are you changing our life?" "Maybe. In a good way." "Okay." She went back to her cereal satisfied. That was the thing about kids. They trusted you until you gave them reason not to. Adrian was determined never to give them that reason. He dropped them at school and daycare, drove to the office, parked in his usual spot, walked through the lobby, up the elevator, through the doors into the firm where he'd spent 6 years being invisible. Todd was waiting at his desk. "Morning. You ready to talk?" "Yeah." They went to the conference room. This time Mitchell was there too, along with Sarah. All 3 of them, like they'd coordinated their approach. "So," Mitchell said, "have you thought about our conversation?" "I have." "And?" Adrian sat down, looked at each of them in turn. "I'm declining the promotion, and I'm resigning, effective immediately." The room went very still. Sarah spoke first. "I'm sorry, what?" "I'm resigning. Today's my last day." Todd leaned forward. "You can't be serious." I'm completely serious. Mitchell's expression shifted into something harder. Adrian, I think you're making a mistake, a significant one. We're offering you, I know what you're offering, and I'm saying no. Because of Celine Vale. Because I'm worth more than you're willing to pay. And I found someone who agrees. Sarah's voice went cold. You do understand that leaving this firm under these circumstances will have consequences. We don't take kindly to people who what? Who refuse to let you exploit their relationships? Who won't compromise themselves to make you money? That's not what this is. That's exactly what this is. Adrian stood up. I've spent 6 years producing exceptional work for this firm. Work that won you clients, made you money, built your reputation. And the only time you noticed was when you thought you could use me to get something you wanted. That's not opportunity. That's extraction. And I'm done being extracted from. Todd stood too. You walk out that door, you're done in this industry. We'll make sure of it. No, you won't. Because if you try, Celine Vale will bury you so deep you'll never find your way back out. And you know it. Mitchell raised a hand. Let's all calm down. Adrian, I understand you're emotional right now. I'm not emotional. I'm clear. For the first time in years, I'm completely clear. He pulled his laptop from his bag, his phone, his security badge. Set them all on the table. That's everything. I'll need my personal items from my desk, and then I'm gone. You're obligated to give 2 weeks' notice, Sarah said. Sue me. He walked out of the conference room, went to his desk, packed the few things that mattered. A photo of his kids, a coffee mug Emma had made in art class, a notebook full of ideas that nobody here had ever asked about. Marcus appeared at his cubicle. Dude, what's happening? I'm leaving. Like leaving? Yeah. For where? Vale Capital. Marcus's eyes went wide. You're serious? Completely. Damn, that's... Wow. Good for you, man. Really. Adrian looked at him, this guy who'd probably report back to Todd within 5 minutes, but still genuinely seemed happy for him. Thanks. For what it's worth, I always thought you were better than this place. Then why didn't you say something? Marcus hesitated. Because I didn't think it would matter. I didn't think anyone was listening. Someone was. You just didn't see her. Adrian finished packing, picked up the box with his things, and walked toward the elevator. People were staring now, whispers spreading through the office like fire through dry grass. Todd intercepted him at the elevator bank. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yes, it is. You think Celine Vale actually cares about you? You're a novelty to her, a project. 6 months from now, when she gets bored, you'll be right back where you started. Except you won't be able to come back here. Adrian pressed the elevator button. You're wrong about her, and you're wrong about me, but keep telling yourself whatever makes this easier. The elevator arrived. He stepped in. Todd stayed in the hallway, face red, looking like a man watching something valuable slip away and finally understanding it was his fault. The doors closed. Adrian rode down to the lobby, walked out into the Miami morning, put his box in the trunk of his car, and sat behind the wheel for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and called Celine. It's done, he said when she answered. How do you feel? Terrified. Relieved. Like I just jumped off something high and I'm not sure if I'm flying or falling. That's normal. The fear means you did something real. A pause. Take the rest of the day. Be with your kids. Monday morning, 9 a.m., my office. We'll start building something that actually matters. Celine? Yeah? What if I can't do this? What if I'm not as good as you think I am? Then we'll find out together. But I don't think that's going to happen. I'm rarely wrong about people. Rarely isn't never. No. But the risk of being wrong about you is worth taking. Now go. Your kids need to hear that their dad just did something brave. She hung up. Adrian sat in his car, box of personal items in the trunk, whole life suddenly different, and allowed himself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. He'd walked away from security. He'd chosen possibility over safety. He'd bet on himself in a way he'd never done before. And either it would work or it wouldn't, but at least he'd know. At least he'd tried. He started the car and drove home, where 3 children were waiting who didn't know yet that everything had changed, that their father had chosen growth over fear, that the tight, careful life they'd been living was about to open up into something bigger. And for the first time in 6 years, Adrian Cross felt like he could breathe all the way down. The weekend passed in a strange blur of normalcy and underlying tension. Adrian took the kids to the park on Saturday, watched them play on the swings, and chase each other through the grass while he sat on a bench, pretending to read email on his phone, but actually just thinking about Monday. About walking into a new building, a new office, a new life that he'd chosen but still didn't quite believe was real. Emma sat down next to him at one point, sweaty and breathing hard from running. "You're thinking again," she said. "Always." "About work?" "About a lot of things." She leaned against his shoulder, still catching her breath. "Are we okay? Like money, okay?" Adrian felt his chest tighten, 9 years old and already carrying questions she shouldn't have to ask. "Yeah, Em, we're okay. Better than okay, actually. I got a new job. Starts Monday." "Is that why you were weird this week?" "Probably." "Is it a good job?" "I think so. Better than the old one." "Does it pay more?" "Yes." She was quiet for a moment, processing. "So we won't have to worry as much?" "We'll always have to be smart about money, but we won't have to worry the same way." He put his arm around her. "You shouldn't have to think about this stuff, you know. You should just get to be a kid." "Someone has to think about it." "That's my job, not yours." "But you were worried. I could tell." "I was, but I'm not anymore. Or at least, I'm worried about different things now." "Like what?" "Like whether I'm good enough. Whether I made the right choice. Normal work stuff." Emma looked up at him with those serious eyes that saw too much. "You're always good enough, Dad. You just don't think you are." Something in Adrian's throat went tight. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just don't notice because you're busy." "I notice. Sometimes." She stood up. "I'm going back to play, but you should stop worrying. It makes your face weird." She ran off before he could respond, leaving Adrian sitting on the bench with the sun warm on his face and his daughter's words sitting heavy in his chest. Sunday he spent cleaning the apartment, doing laundry, meal prepping for the week ahead because that's what single parents did. They tried to control the controllable. The HR paperwork from Vail Capital came through in the afternoon, official and real and slightly terrifying. He signed everything, scanned it, sent it back, and then sat at his kitchen table staring at the confirmation email like it might disappear if he looked away. His phone buzzed. Celine, paperwork came through. You're official. Welcome to Vail Capital." Adrian, "Thanks. Still feels surreal." Celine, "It'll feel more real tomorrow. Get some sleep. First days are always harder than they need to be." Adrian, "Any advice?" Celine, "Don't try to impress anyone. Just be exactly as good as you are. That's enough." Monday morning came with the same chaos but different stakes. Adrian dressed in his best suit, still the same one from the gala, still not quite fitting right, and made breakfast while the kids moved through their usual routine. "You look fancy," Sophie observed, staring at him over her cereal. "New job. Have to look professional." "You always look professional," Marcus said through a mouthful of toast. "Don't talk with your mouth full." "You always say that." "Because you always do it." Emma came out of the bedroom already dressed, backpack ready. She looked at Adrian and something shifted in her expression. "You're nervous." "Little bit." "You'll be fine." "How do you know?" "Because you're good at what you do. Everyone knows it except you." Adrian wondered when his 9-year-old had become wiser than him. "Thanks, Em. Also, your tie is crooked." He fixed his tie, got the kids out the door, dropped them at their respective schools, and then drove to the address Celine had sent him. Vail Capital occupied the top 15 floors of a glass tower in the financial district, the kind of building that looked expensive even from the outside. Adrian parked in the garage, took the elevator up to the 42nd floor, and stepped out into a lobby that was all marble and clean lines and the particular kind of quiet that comes from places where serious money moves. The receptionist looked up. "Adrian Cross?" "Yes." "Ms. Vail is expecting you. I'll take you up." She led him to a private elevator that required a key card, rode with him in silence to the 55th floor, and deposited him in a hallway that overlooked the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. Celine's office was at the end. The door was open. He knocked anyway. She looked up from her computer, smiled slightly. You're early. Habit. Good habit. Come in. Close the door. Adrian stepped inside. The office was huge but not ostentatious. Windows on 2 walls, minimal furniture, everything functional and clean. Celine was wearing dark pants and a white shirt, no jacket, looking more like she was about to work than perform work. How are you feeling? She asked. Terrified. Also good. Fear means you care. She stood up, gestured to the window. See that building there? 3 blocks south, the brown one? Yeah. That's where your old firm is. You can see it from here every day if you want. Reminder of what you walked away from. Why would I want that reminder? Because forgetting where you came from makes you soft. And I need you sharp. She turned back to him. Here's how this works. You're reporting directly to me for the first 3 months. I want to see how you think in real time, how you handle pressure, whether you can actually do what I think you can do. After that, assuming things go well, you'll move into the advisory division full-time with your own team. My own team. Eventually. First, you have to prove you can build the frameworks they'll work from. She walked over to her desk, picked up a folder, handed it to him. This is the Cordova account. Your old firm landed it, remember? Except the model you built was incomplete. They presented the pretty version, skipped the risk analysis because it didn't support the story they wanted to tell. Client signed anyway because they trusted the firm's reputation. Adrian opened the folder, scanned the first few pages. This is going to collapse. I know. Question is when and how badly. I want you to build a complete analysis, full risk modeling, stress testing, scenario planning. Everything you would have done if anyone at your old firm had actually asked you to finish the work. Why? Because Cordova's CFO is a friend. And in about 6 months, when the model your old firm sold them starts showing cracks, I'm going to offer them something better, which means I need something better ready. Adrian looked up at her. You're going to poach their client. I'm going to offer a client superior analysis when their current provider proves inadequate. Not the same thing. Feels pretty close. Does it bother you? Adrian thought about Todd's face in the elevator, about Mitchell's polite threats, about 6 years of being invisible. No, not even a little. Good, then get started. You've got an office on 53. Linda will show you down. She sat back down at her computer, already moving on to the next thing. Then she looked up again. Adrian? Yeah? Don't hold back. I didn't hire you to be careful. I hired you to be right. He spent the first week buried in the Cordova analysis, pulling apart the model his old firm had built and finding exactly what he'd suspected. A framework designed to support a conclusion rather than test it. The numbers were technically accurate but strategically misleading, optimized to make the client feel confident rather than informed. It was the kind of thing that would work fine until it didn't, and then it would fail spectacularly. Adrian rebuilt it from scratch, running scenarios his old firm had ignored, stress testing assumptions they'd taken for granted, mapping risk vectors they'd either missed or deliberately omitted. The work was absorbing in a way work hadn't been in years, challenging, complex, the kind of problem that required complete focus and didn't leave room for anything else. He worked late most nights, later than he should have, until Celine sent him a message on Wednesday evening. Go home. Your kids need you more than this analysis does. He looked at his watch. 8:47 p.m. He'd missed dinner, missed bedtime, missed everything that mattered because he'd gotten lost in the work. He packed up immediately, drove home faster than he should have, and found Marissa on his couch watching TV while his kids slept. I'm sorry, he said. I lost track of time. It's fine. They ate, homework's done, everyone's in bed. I'll pay you extra. Adrian, stop. You're starting a new job. You're allowed to work late. Just don't make it a habit, okay? I won't. She left. Adrian stood in the quiet apartment feeling the familiar guilt settle over him like a blanket he couldn't shake off. He checked on the kids, all 3 asleep, peaceful, unaware that their father was already making the same mistakes in a new place that he'd made in the old one. His phone buzzed. Celine, you made it home? Adrian, yeah, kids were already asleep. Celine, that's going to happen sometimes. Don't spiral about it. Adrian, how did you know I was spiraling? Celine, Because I know how you think, and because guilt is useless. Better to just show up tomorrow and do better. Adrian, is that what you do? Celine, I don't have kids. I get to be as obsessive as I want. You don't. Remember that. He did better the next day, leaving at 6 to pick up the kids himself, making dinner, sitting with them through homework and bath time and bedtime stories. Emma watched him carefully, like she was testing whether this new version of their life was real or temporary. Your new job is busy, she observed while he was tucking her in. It is, but I'm going to get better at balancing, I promise. You always promise that. I know, but this time I mean it. You always say that too. Adrian sat on the edge of her bed. You're right. I do. And I haven't always followed through. But I'm trying, Em. I'm really trying. She looked at him for a long moment. Okay, but if you're going to be late, can you at least text so I know? It's scary when you just don't come home and I don't know why. Something in his chest cracked. Deal. I'll always text. By the end of the second week, Adrian had finished the Cordova analysis. It was brutal, thorough, and undeniable. A complete teardown of the model his old firm had presented, with detailed explanations of every place where they'd prioritized narrative over accuracy. He sent it to Celine late on a Friday afternoon, then sat back and waited. She called him 10 minutes later. Come up to my office. When he got there, she had the analysis open on 3 monitors, moving through it with the focused intensity she brought to everything. This is exceptional, she said without looking up. Exactly what I needed. Thanks. I'm serious. This is the level of work most firms can't produce even when they're trying. And you did it in 2 weeks while adjusting to a new position. She finally looked at him. How confident are you in the conclusions? Completely. The model they built works in a narrow range of conditions. Outside that range, it falls apart, and the conditions are already shifting. Timeline? 6 months if the market stays stable, 3 if there's volatility. And your recommendations? Complete restructuring, different risk allocation, different hedging strategy, different underlying assumptions. It's not a small fix, it's a rebuild. Celine smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who'd just confirmed a suspicion and was about to act on it. Perfect. I'm presenting this to Cordova's CFO next week. I want you there. As what? As the person who built it. I'm not taking credit for your work, Adrian. That's not how I operate. The meeting with Cordova's CFO happened the following Wednesday in a conference room on the 55th floor. Richard Cordova was in his late 40s, sharp-eyed and skeptical, the kind of person who'd built a career on not being fooled. He sat across from Adrian and Celine with the analysis open on a tablet in front of him. This contradicts everything Mitchell Chen told me, he said after reading through the executive summary. I know, Celine said calmly. That's because Mitchell was selling you a story, not giving you analysis. You're saying his firm lied to me. I'm saying they optimized for comfort over accuracy. There's a difference, but the result is the same. You're exposed in ways you don't understand. Richard looked at Adrian. You built the original model, the one they presented, a version of it. They asked me for preliminary analysis. I gave them the framework. They took it and simplified it until it supported the outcome they wanted. Why? Because complete analysis showed risk they didn't want to explain. Easier to skip it than address it. And you let them. Adrian met his eyes. I didn't have a choice. Junior analyst, no authority, no access to the client. I built what they asked for. What they did with it was out of my hands. Until now. Until now. Richard looked back at the analysis, scrolling through pages of detailed modeling. You're confident in this? Completely. And you're saying if we don't restructure, we're looking at significant losses. In 6 months, yes, maybe sooner. How significant? Adrian glanced at Celine, who nodded. Conservatively, 30 to 40% of portfolio value. Worst case, 70. The room got very quiet. Richard put down the tablet. That's catastrophic. It's avoidable, Celine said, but it requires action now, not later. What kind of action? Full restructuring, new strategy, new risk model, new execution framework. We can handle it, but it's not a small project. And the cost? Less than the losses you'll take if you don't. She slid a proposal across the table. This is what we're offering. Complete portfolio advisory, direct access to Adrian and the team he'll be building, quarterly reviews, real-time risk monitoring. Everything your current firm should have been doing from the start. Richard picked up the proposal, read through it carefully. Then he looked at Adrian again. You left Mitchell's firm for this. I did. Why? Because I was tired of watching good work get wasted by people who cared more about closing deals than serving clients. And you think Celine's different. I know she is. She hired me to be right, not to make her look good. That's the difference. Richard was quiet for a long moment. Then he closed the proposal and stood up. I need to discuss this with my board, but I'll be honest. What you've shown me here is concerning, very concerning. It should be, Adrian said. That's the point. I'll be in touch by Friday. He left. Celine and Adrian sat in the conference room alone. That went well, Celine said. How can you tell? Because he's scared, and fear makes people smart if they're paying attention. She looked at Adrian. You handled that perfectly. Didn't oversell, didn't backpedal, just presented the truth and let him sit with it. What if he doesn't sign? Then someone else will, but he will. The analysis is too good to ignore. She was right. Richard called on Thursday afternoon and scheduled a signing meeting for the following Monday. When Adrian got the news, he sat at his desk staring at the email confirmation and trying to process what had just happened. He'd poached a client from his old firm. Not just any client, a major account, the one they'd celebrated landing 2 months ago. And he'd done it by being right when they'd chosen to be comfortable. His phone buzzed. Todd Markham. He almost didn't answer, then decided he wanted to hear this. Adrian Cross. You son of a bitch! Todd's voice was tight with rage. You poached Cordova. I provided them with better analysis. You stole our client. Your client chose to leave because your analysis was incomplete. That's not theft. That's consequence. We're going to bury you for this. Ethically, legally, whatever it takes. You signed an NDA. You had access to proprietary information. I signed an NDA that covered your firm's internal processes, not my own work. The model I built for Cordova was mine before you ever touched it, and the new analysis I gave them is completely original. Your lawyers already know this, by the way. Celine had them checked. You think you're protected because you're working for her. You're not. She's using you, Adrian, and when she's done, you'll have nothing. Is that what you tell yourself? That anyone who values my work must be using me? I tell myself the truth, which is that you're not as special as you think you are. You got lucky. That's all. Adrian felt something cold and sharp settle in his chest. You know what, Todd? You're right. I did get lucky. I got lucky that someone finally saw what I was capable of instead of what was convenient. I got lucky that I had the courage to leave when you tried to exploit me. And I got really lucky that you're exactly as mediocre as I always suspected, because it makes this so much easier. He hung up. His hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something else. Something that felt like anger mixed with vindication and the particular satisfaction that comes from being proven right. Celine appeared in his doorway. Todd called you, she said. Not a question. How did you know? Because he called Mitchell. Mitchell called me. Whole chain of panic. She leaned against the doorframe. How do you feel? Good. Better than I should, probably. You're allowed to feel good. You just proved that everything they said about you was wrong. That's worth celebrating. They're going to come after me. Let them try. We have better lawyers, more resources, and the truth on our side. They'll make noise for a few weeks and then move on to the next person they can exploit. She stepped into the office. But I need you to understand something. This is only the beginning. You just proved you can execute at this level. Now I need you to do it again and again until it stops feeling like vindication and starts feeling like Tuesday. That's the standard? That's the standard. Excellence as baseline, not exception. She paused. Can you do that? Adrian thought about his old cubicle, about 6 years of invisible work, about Todd's face in the elevator. Then he thought about Emma asking if they were okay, about the twins sleeping peacefully while he worried, about building a life instead of just surviving one. Yeah, he said. I can do that. Good, because I'm about to make your life more complicated. She dropped a folder on his desk. Inside were profiles of 6 analysts, all younger than Adrian, all impressive on paper. "These are your team," she said. "Hey, guys, they start in 2 weeks. You're going to train them, lead them, build the advisory division from the ground up. Think you're ready?" Adrian looked at the profiles, at the credentials and experience and potential sitting in front of him. People who would be looking to him for direction, for leadership, for the kind of guidance he'd never gotten himself. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I've never managed anyone before. Neither had I when I started. You'll figure it out." She turned to leave, stopped at the door. "Oh, and Adrian? Your old firm is presenting to another potential client next week. Manufacturing company, big portfolio, lots of exposure. I want you to build a counter-analysis. Same thing you did with Cordova. Show them what they're missing. You want me to poach another one? I want you to offer better service to people who deserve it. If that happens to hurt your old firm's business, that's just market forces at work." She left. Adrian sat alone in his office, looking at the profiles of his future team, thinking about the analysis he'd just been asked to build, processing the fact that his life had changed so completely in 3 weeks that he barely recognized it. His phone buzzed. Emma, texting from school with Marissa's phone. "Emma, can we get pizza tonight? I finished my science project." Adrian, "Yes, I'll pick it up on the way home." Emma, "You're not working late?" Adrian, "Not tonight. Tonight is pizza and science projects." Emma, "Promise?" Adrian, "Promise." He left the office at 5:30, picked up pizza from the place the kids loved, got home while they were still doing homework at the kitchen table. The twins looked up in surprise. "You're early," Sophie said. "Promised your sister we'd celebrate her project." Emma smiled, and it was the first real smile he'd seen from her in weeks. "You remembered." "Of course I remembered." They ate pizza and Emma explained her project about ocean ecosystems, while Marcus and Sophie asked questions that ranged from brilliant to completely absurd. Adrian listened to all of it, present and focused, and grateful for this moment of normalcy in the middle of everything changing. Later, after the kids were asleep, he sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and started building the analysis Celine had asked for. This time he set a timer, gave himself 2 hours, and when it went off, he stopped working regardless of where he was in the process. Progress over perfection, sustainable over exceptional. It was a new kind of discipline, and it was harder than he'd expected. But he was learning. His phone buzzed. Celine, like she had some kind of radar for when he was thinking about work. Celine, "You stopped at 2 hours. I can see the file timestamp." Adrian, "You're monitoring my work?" Celine, "I'm monitoring everyone's work. Don't take it personally." Adrian, "Should I be concerned?" Celine, "Only if you're doing something worth being concerned about." "Are you?" Adrian, "No." Celine, "Then stop worrying and go to bed. Tomorrow's Friday. Finish the analysis then." He closed his laptop, turned off the lights, and went to bed in his too-small apartment where 3 children slept, and the future was still uncertain, but felt more possible than it had in years. And somewhere across the city, in an office building he could see from his new workspace, his old firm was realizing that the invisible man they'd overlooked for 6 years had just become their biggest problem. Adrian fell asleep thinking about that, and for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid of what came next. He was ready for it. The call from Mitchell's firm came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Adrian had started at Vale Capital. Not from Mitchell himself, he was too smart for that, but from their legal department. A woman named Patricia Chen, who spoke in the carefully neutral tone of someone delivering a message designed to intimidate. "Mr. Cross, we need to discuss some concerns regarding your departure from the firm and your subsequent activities." Adrian was at his desk, coffee halfway to his mouth. He set it down slowly. "What concerns?" "We have reason to believe you may have violated the terms of your employment agreement, specifically provisions related to client solicitation and confidential information." "I didn't solicit anyone. Cordova came to us." "That's not how we understand it. We have documentation suggesting Ms. Vale reached out to Mr. Cordova directly using information you provided about the account." "What information would that be?" "The risk analysis, the one that contradicted our presentation to the client." Adrian felt something cold settle in his stomach. "The analysis I built on my own time, using publicly available data and my own methodology? The analysis that relied on proprietary frameworks developed during your employment with us?" There's nothing proprietary about basic financial modeling, Patricia. You're reaching. We don't think so, and we're prepared to pursue legal action if necessary. She paused, and Adrian could hear paper rustling. However, we'd prefer to resolve this amicably. If you're willing to sign an agreement stating you won't solicit any additional clients from our portfolio, and if Ms. Vale agrees to release Cordova back to us, we can avoid costly litigation. Adrian almost laughed. You want me to give back a client who chose to leave because your work was inadequate? We want you to acknowledge that your actions were inappropriate and agree to cease further interference with our business relationships. Or what? Or we file a lawsuit, breach of contract, theft of trade secrets, tortious interference. Whatever applies. And we make sure every firm in this city knows exactly what kind of person you are. There it was, the real threat. Not the lawsuit, they both knew that was mostly posturing, but the reputation damage, the whisper campaign, the kind of professional destruction that happened quietly, behind closed doors, in conversations Adrian would never be part of. I need to consult with my attorney, Adrian said. Of course, we'll expect to hear from you by end of week. She hung up. Adrian sat at his desk for a long moment, phone still in his hand, heart doing something complicated in his chest. Then he walked upstairs to Celine's office. She was on a call, but when she saw his face, she held up a finger, wrapped up the conversation quickly, and hung up. What happened? Mitchell's firm just threatened to sue me. And you. Her expression didn't change. For what? Client solicitation, trade secrets, the usual corporate intimidation playbook. He handed her his phone with Patricia's number still on the screen. They want Cordova back and a promise that I won't touch any of their other clients. Celine looked at the number, then at Adrian. How do you feel? Honestly? Scared. This could destroy everything before it even starts. It could, if we let it. She picked up her office phone, dialed a number from memory. David, I need you to conference in Rebecca. Now. 30 seconds later, a woman's voice came through the speaker. Rebecca Harding. What's the emergency? Adrian's old firm is threatening legal action, client solicitation, trade secrets, the standard harassment package. I'm sending you the details now. Celine was already typing on her computer. I want a response drafted by end of day. Make it clear that if they pursue this, we'll countersue for defamation, abuse of process, and anything else that applies. And make sure they understand that we have significantly more resources for prolonged litigation than they do. Understood. Adrian, I'll need you to send me everything. Employment contract, the analysis you built for Cordova, any communications with the old firm, everything. I'll do it this afternoon, Adrian said. Good. Celine, do you want to go aggressive or measured? Aggressive. I want them to understand that threatening my people has consequences. Done. I'll have a draft to you by 6. Rebecca hung up. Celine looked at Adrian. This is going to be fine. You don't know that. I do, because they're bluffing. They don't have a case. They're just trying to scare you into backing down. It won't work. What if it does work? What if they actually file? Then we bury them in discovery until they beg us to settle. Adrian, listen to me. This is what happens when you threaten established players. They don't compete on merit. They compete through intimidation. But you're not alone anymore. You have me, you have our legal team, and you have the truth on your side. Adrian wanted to believe her, but fear was a different kind of math, one that didn't calculate rationally. They said they'd make sure every firm in the city knows what kind of person I am. Let them try. Every firm in this city will know you're the person who built an analysis so good it poached a major client from a legacy firm. That's not a reputation problem. That's a credential. That's not how they'll frame it. They can frame it however they want. The work speaks for itself. She stood up, walked around her desk. I know you're scared. You should be. They're trying to scare you. That's the point. But don't let fear make your decisions. You've already proven you're better than that. Adrian nodded, not entirely convinced, but not ready to fall apart either. Go send Rebecca everything she needs, Celine said. Then go back to work. We have a business to build, and I'm not letting Mitchell Chen's wounded ego slow us down. He spent the rest of the day compiling documents, forwarding emails, building a timeline of everything that had happened since he'd left the firm. By the time he finished, it was after 7, and the office was mostly empty except for the people who treated work like a religion. His phone buzzed. Emma. Emma. Are you coming home? Adrian. Yes. Sorry, got caught up in work stuff. Emma. You said you'd be better about this. Adrian. I know, I'm leaving now. 20 minutes. Emma. Okay. The guilt hit harder than the legal threats. He packed up quickly, drove home through traffic that seemed designed specifically to make him later than he already was, and walked into the apartment to find Emma doing homework at the kitchen table while the twins played some elaborate game involving pillow forts and dinosaur toys. I'm sorry, he said immediately. Emma looked up. You keep saying that. I know. And you keep being late anyway. I know that too. She put down her pencil. Is something wrong? At work? Adrian hesitated. Emma was 9. She didn't need to carry his problems, but she was also too smart to lie to. Some stuff came up. Nothing terrible, just complicated. I'm handling it. Is it because you left your old job? Kind of. Are they mad at you? Yeah, but it's going to be okay. How do you know? Because I have good people helping me, and because being right matters more than being comfortable. Emma studied him for a moment, then went back to her homework. Okay, but you still need to be home more. I will. I promise. You always promise. This time, I mean it more. She almost smiled. That's what you said last time. Adrian made dinner, pasta with jarred sauce because it was fast and the kids would actually eat it, and sat with them through the evening routine. Bath time, homework check, bedtime stories. The ordinary mechanics of single parenthood that kept life moving forward even when everything else felt unstable. After they were asleep, he sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, reading through the draft response Rebecca had sent. It was aggressive, thorough, and slightly terrifying in its implications. If Mitchell's firm actually pursued this, the legal battle would be expensive, time-consuming, and public. His phone buzzed. Celine. Celine. Stop reading the legal brief. It's designed to scare them, not you. Adrian. How did you know I was reading it? Celine. Because I know how you think, and because the document was accessed 10 minutes ago from your IP address. Adrian. You're tracking document access? Celine. I'm tracking everything. It's called due diligence. Adrian. It's called paranoia. Celine. Same thing when you're managing billions. Now stop spiraling and go to sleep. Rebecca knows what she's doing. He closed the laptop but didn't sleep. Just sat in the dark kitchen thinking about everything that could go wrong, all the ways this could fall apart, the possibility that choosing courage over safety had been a mistake he'd be paying for indefinitely. The response went out the next morning. By noon, Patricia Chen had called back. This is unnecessarily aggressive, Mr. Cross. That's not my response. That's my legal counsel's response. And she's right. You don't have a case. We have documentation. You have speculation. There's a difference. Adrian was surprised by how steady his voice sounded. I didn't violate my employment agreement. I didn't steal trade secrets. I built original analysis using public data and my own methodology. Cordova chose to move their business based on the quality of that work. That's not solicitation. That's competition. Ms. Vale contacted them directly, after they requested a second opinion, which they're allowed to do. That's not what our documentation shows. Then your documentation is wrong, and if you pursue this, we'll prove it in discovery, which means you'll spend months and hundreds of thousands of dollars on a case you can't win, while we countersue for harassment and defamation. Is that really how you want to spend your time? Patricia was quiet for a moment. We're prepared to litigate if necessary. No, you're not. You're prepared to threaten litigation and hope I fold. That's different. He paused. I'm done being intimidated by people who mistake aggression for strength. If Mitchell wants to sue me, tell him to file. Otherwise, stop wasting my time. He hung up before she could respond. His hands were shaking, not from fear this time, from adrenaline, from the strange exhilaration that comes from standing your ground when everything in you wants to retreat. Celine appeared in his doorway 5 minutes later. Patricia just called Mitchell. Mitchell called me. You told them to file or shut up. Was that wrong? That was perfect. She was smiling, actually smiling. They're not going to file. They're going to make noise for another week and then move on. You just called their bluff. How do you know? Because I know Mitchell. He's a bully, but he's a smart bully. He knows a losing fight when he sees one. Adrian felt something shift in his chest. Not relief exactly. More like the moment after a jump when you realize you're not falling, you're flying. They're really done? They're really done. With this, anyway. They'll find other ways to be petty, but the legal threat is over. What other ways? Rumor mill, mostly. Whisper campaigns about how you're difficult to work with, disloyal, whatever narrative makes them feel better. But it won't matter. Your work will speak louder than their gossip. That night, Adrian made it home by 6, helped with homework, played a board game with the twins that devolved into chaos when Marcus insisted on making up rules as they went. Emma watched all of it with that careful expression she wore when she was testing whether this new version of their life was sustainable. "You're home again," she said when he was tucking her in. "Told you I would be? 2 days doesn't mean it's permanent." "I know, but it's a start." She was quiet for a moment. "Your new job is better, right? Like, actually better?" "Yeah, Em. It's actually better." "Good. Because I like it when you're not stressed all the time. You're nicer." "I'm always nice." "You're always trying to be nice. That's different." Adrian sat on the edge of her bed. "When did you get so smart about people?" "I've always been smart about people. You're just noticing now." "Fair enough." "Dad?" "Yeah?" "Are the people at your old job still mad at you?" "Probably, but it doesn't matter as much as it used to." "Why not?" "Because I'm not there anymore, and the people at my new job actually want me there." Emma thought about this. "That's good. You should be somewhere people want you." After she was asleep, Adrian stood in the doorway of his kids' rooms, Emma in one, the twins in the other, and felt the weight of everything he was building. Not just a career, a life. A sustainable, breathing life where work mattered but didn't consume everything, where his kids got the father they deserved instead of the exhausted ghost he'd been becoming. The next week, his team arrived. 6 analysts, all younger than Adrian, all impressive in ways that made him acutely aware that he was supposed to be leading them, despite having never led anyone before. Celine introduced them in the conference room on 55, then left Adrian to figure out how to actually manage people who were looking at him like he had answers. "So," he said after an awkward silence, "I'm Adrian. I'm going to be honest. I've never done this before. Led a team, I mean. I've been doing individual contributor work for 6 years, so if I mess this up, tell me." One of the analysts, a woman named Jessica Park, who had a PhD in quantitative finance from Stanford, raised her hand slightly. "What exactly are we doing here?" The job description was vague. "We're building an advisory division from scratch. That means creating frameworks for risk analysis, portfolio modeling, client strategy. Everything that most firms do badly, we're going to do right. And how do we know what right looks like?" This from a guy named Marcus, different Marcus, not his son, who looked barely 25 but had worked at 2 hedge funds already. "We test it. We build models, stress test them, compare them against what other firms are doing. When our analysis is better, we know we're on the right track. And when it's not better," Jessica again, "we figure out why and fix it. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being rigorous." They spent the first week just building frameworks, arguing about methodology, testing different approaches to problems that didn't have obvious solutions. Adrian found himself in the strange position of both learning and teaching simultaneously, learning how to lead while teaching people who were sometimes smarter than him about specific things but less experienced at putting it all together. It was exhausting and energizing in equal measure. Celine checked in periodically, sitting in on meetings without warning, asking questions that exposed gaps in their thinking, pushing them harder than anyone was comfortable with. "This model assumes stable conditions," she said during a Thursday afternoon review, pointing at Jessica's work. "What happens when conditions aren't stable?" "We adjust the parameters," Jessica said. "How?" "Based on market indicators." "Which indicators? Be specific." Jessica outlined her approach. Celine listened, then shook her head. "You're reacting to change, not anticipating it. That's fine for managing existing positions, but we're trying to advise clients before problems develop. How do you build a model that sees around corners? You can't predict the future, Marcus said. No, but you can map probabilities. You can identify conditions that precede volatility. You can build scenarios that prepare clients for multiple futures instead of just the one you think is most likely. She looked at Adrian. Show them the Cordova work, the scenario planning section. Adrian pulled up the analysis on the screen, walked them through how he'd mapped different potential futures, assigned probabilities, built response strategies for each. The team listened with the focused intensity of people realizing they were being held to a standard higher than they'd expected. This is the baseline, Celine said when he finished. This is the quality of thinking I expect. Not sometimes, every time. She stood up. You have until Monday to rebuild Jessica's model with proper scenario planning. Adrian will review it. If it's not good enough, you start over. She left. The team looked at Adrian. Is she always like that? Jessica asked. Pretty much. That's intense. That's the job. You get used to it. They worked through the weekend with Adrian checking in periodically, offering guidance, pushing back when their thinking wasn't clear enough. By Sunday evening, they had something that was actually good. Not perfect, but sophisticated enough to be useful. Adrian sent it to Celine at 9 p.m., not expecting a response until Monday. She called at 9:15. This is better. Still not great, but better. Thanks, I think? It's a compliment. They're learning. A pause. How are you doing with the team leadership thing? Honestly, I have no idea. I feel like I'm making it up as I go. That's what leadership is. Making it up with enough confidence that people trust you're going somewhere intentional. That's terrifying. It's supposed to be. If it was easy, everyone would do it. She paused. Your old firm is presenting to that manufacturing client I mentioned. Wednesday morning. I want your counter-analysis ready by Tuesday. That's 2 days. I know. Can you do it? Adrian thought about the team he now had, about the frameworks they'd built, about the possibility of proving again that he could execute at this level. Yeah, we can do it. Good. Because if we land this one, that's 2 major clients in a month. At that point, we're not lucky. We're a pattern. Tuesday afternoon, they presented the analysis to Celine in the same conference room where she'd eviscerated their first attempt. This time, the work was sharper, more comprehensive, the kind of analysis that didn't leave room for doubt. Celine read through it in silence, making notes, occasionally asking questions that forced them to defend their assumptions. After an hour, she closed her laptop. This is excellent work. Adrian sent it to the manufacturing client's CFO with a cover note explaining what they should be asking their current advisor. Won't that seem aggressive? It will seem proactive. There's a difference. The email went out that evening. By Wednesday morning, Adrian had a response. Can we meet to discuss this? Your analysis raises serious concerns about the proposal we're currently considering. They met on Thursday. The CFO was a woman named Catherine Reeves, late 50s, the kind of executive who'd survived 3 decades in manufacturing by being smarter than everyone assumed she was. She sat across from Adrian and his team with the analysis open on her tablet. This suggests the firm currently presenting to us has significantly underestimated our risk exposure, she said without preamble. That's correct, Adrian said. Why? Because they optimized their model for a specific outcome. They started with the conclusion they wanted, that your current portfolio strategy is sound with minor adjustments, and built analysis that supported it. And you didn't? We started with your actual exposure and modeled forward. Different process, different results. Catherine scrolled through the analysis. You're saying if we follow their recommendations, we're looking at potential losses in the range of 40 to 60 million over the next 2 years. Conservatively, yes. And your recommendation? Complete restructuring, different asset allocation, different hedging strategy, different risk management framework. It's not a small change, but it's the only approach that addresses the underlying vulnerabilities, which they missed, which they chose not to see. There's a difference. She looked at him directly. You worked for the firm that's presenting to us, didn't you? Mitchell Chen's group? I did. For how long? 6 years? And now you're competing against them. I'm offering better analysis to clients who deserve it. If that happens to compete with my old firm, that's market forces. It's also personal, I'd imagine. Adrian met her eyes. It is. They spent 6 years taking credit for my work while keeping me invisible. So yes, there's satisfaction in proving they were wrong about what I'm capable of. But that doesn't change the math. Our analysis is better because it's more complete, not because I have an axe to grind. Catherine smiled slightly. I appreciate the honesty. She closed her tablet. I need to discuss this with my board. But I'll tell you the same thing I told Mitchell's team. We're making a decision by end of month. If your analysis holds up under scrutiny, we'll move forward. Fair enough. She stood, shook hands with Adrian and the team. At the door, she turned back. One more thing. The people at your old firm, they spoke very highly of their relationship with me, very confident they understood our needs. You didn't do that. Because I don't know if we understand your needs yet. That's what discovery is for. Exactly. That's why you're still in the running. After she left, Jessica turned to Adrian. Did we just land another client? Maybe. We'll know in 2 weeks. And if we do, then we're officially a threat instead of a fluke, and things get harder from here. Marcus, his analyst Marcus, not his son, grinned. Good. I didn't come here for easy. That night, Adrian made it home by 7, ate dinner with his kids, helped Emma with her math homework while the twins built increasingly elaborate structures out of magnetic tiles, the ordinary machinery of family life that kept everything grounded. His phone buzzed. Mitchell Chen. He almost didn't answer, then decided he wanted to hear this. Adrian Cross. You're actively sabotaging us. Mitchell's voice was tight, controlled, but with an edge underneath. Manufacturing clients we've had relationships with for years. You're coming in and poisoning those relationships. I'm offering better analysis. You're offering criticism disguised as analysis. You're not trying to serve clients, you're trying to hurt us. If your analysis was actually good, mine wouldn't matter. But it's not good, Mitchell. It's convenient, and eventually clients notice the difference. You were one of us. You know how this industry works. We take care of our own. We don't undercut each other. You never took care of me. You took advantage of me for 6 years. So don't talk to me about loyalty when you never showed me any. We gave you a job. You gave me a cubicle and took credit for my work. That's not loyalty. That's exploitation. Adrian stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the city lights. You had a chance to keep me. You could have promoted me when I actually deserved it. You could have valued my work when it mattered. Instead, you waited until you thought you could use me, and when I said no, you threatened to destroy me. So no, Mitchell, I don't owe you anything. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You just haven't accepted it yet. Adrian hung up, turned off his phone, and went back to the kitchen table where his kids were playing, and everything that actually mattered was right in front of him. 2 weeks later, Catherine Reeves signed with Vail Capital. That made 3 major clients in 6 weeks. Celine called an all-hands meeting to announce it, standing in front of the entire advisory division with the kind of calm confidence that made success look inevitable. This is what happens when we execute at the highest level, she said. This is what happens when we refuse to compromise quality for convenience, and this is just the beginning. After the meeting, she pulled Adrian aside. Your old firm is in trouble, real trouble. They've lost 3 accounts in 6 weeks, all to us. Their board is asking questions. Good. Mitchell's probably going to be forced out within the quarter. Adrian waited for the satisfaction to hit. It didn't. Just a kind of tired acknowledgement that the person who'd made his life miserable was finally experiencing consequences. How do you feel about that? Celine asked. Honestly, I don't feel much. He's not my problem anymore. No, he's not. But your team is, and your clients are, and the life you're building is. She paused. You've proven you can execute. Now you need to prove you can sustain it. How? By showing up tomorrow and doing it again, and the day after that, until excellence stops being a surprise and becomes your baseline. That night, lying in bed in his too small apartment that was already starting to feel less cramped because the money was actually breathing now, Adrian thought about everything that had changed in 2 months. New job, new team, new clients, new life. But also, same kids, same responsibilities, same fundamental reality that he was one person trying to build something stable out of circumstances that were anything but. The difference was that now, for the first time in years, he wasn't doing it alone. And that mattered more than any client win or professional victory ever could. 3 months into his new position, Adrian got a call he wasn't expecting. His old firm wanted a meeting. Not Mitchell. Mitchell had been quietly pushed into early retirement after the board finally acknowledged what everyone already knew, that his leadership had cost them millions in lost business. But Sarah Brennan, the COO, who'd helped orchestrate the promotion offer that had started all of this. "We'd like to discuss a potential collaboration," she said, when Adrian answered, her voice carrying that practiced corporate diplomacy that meant something uncomfortable was coming. "What kind of collaboration?" "Perhaps better discussed in person. Are you available this week?" Adrian almost said no automatically, then reconsidered. Celine had taught him that information was always valuable, even when it came from people you didn't trust. "Thursday afternoon, 3 o'clock, your offices." "Actually, we were hoping you might come to us. Neutral ground. Your offices are nowhere, Sarah. I'm done pretending we're equals negotiating in good faith." There was a pause. "Thursday at 3 then. I'll send you the conference room details." When Adrian mentioned it to Celine that evening, she looked up from the portfolio analysis she was reviewing and raised an eyebrow. "They want something. Question is what?" Maybe they're finally ready to acknowledge they screwed up. Corporations don't acknowledge mistakes. They restructure around them and pretend the problem never existed. She closed her laptop. "But go. Listen to what they're offering. Just don't agree to anything without running it past me first." "You think it's a trap?" "I think it's Sarah Brennan trying to salvage a firm that's hemorrhaging clients and credibility, which makes it unpredictable." She paused. "Want me to come with you?" "No, I need to do this myself." "Okay. But Adrian? Whatever they offer, remember that you don't owe them closure. You don't owe them forgiveness. You don't owe them anything except professional courtesy, and barely that." Thursday afternoon, Adrian walked into the building where he'd spent 6 years being invisible, rode the elevator to the floor where his old cubicle still probably sat empty or reassigned to someone else, and followed Sarah's assistant to a conference room that overlooked the city. Sarah was already there, along with 2 people Adrian didn't recognize. A man in his 50s wearing an expensive suit and the kind of watch that costs more than most people's cars, and a younger woman with sharp eyes and a legal pad covered in notes. "Adrian, thank you for coming." Sarah stood, extended her hand. He shook it briefly. "This is Robert Kessler, our new managing director, and Claire Martinez from our strategic planning division." Robert stepped forward with the practiced confidence of someone used to being the most important person in the room. "Mr. Cross, I've heard a lot about you." "I'm sure you have." "Please sit. Can we get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine. What's this about?" Robert settled into his chair with the careful positioning of a man about to deliver a pitch. "I'll be direct. The firm has undergone significant changes since you left. Changes that include a hard look at how we operate, how we value our people, how we structure our client relationships." Mitchell Chen's departure was part of that process. Mitchell didn't depart. He was forced out. The circumstances aren't relevant. What matters is that we're committed to building a better organization, one that recognizes talent instead of overlooking it. Adrian said nothing, just waited. Claire opened a folder, slid a document across the table. "We'd like to offer you a position, Senior Director of Quantitative Analysis. You'd have your own division, full autonomy over methodology and team structure, and direct reporting to Robert. The compensation package is outlined here." Adrian glanced at the numbers. They were substantial, more than Celine was paying him, though not by as much as they probably thought. "Why?" "Because you're exceptional at what you do," Robert said. "Because we made a mistake letting you go. And because, frankly, we need someone with your capability if we're going to rebuild our competitive position. You don't need me. You need what I represent. The clients I've brought to Vail Capital, the reputation I'm building. You want me to bring that back here so you can tell your board you fixed the problem." Sarah leaned forward. "Adrian, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. The way you were treated was unacceptable, but this is a genuine offer. We're not trying to manipulate you." "Aren't you? Because from where I'm sitting, this looks exactly like manipulation. You ignored me for 6 years. You tried to exploit my relationship with Celine Imtirin. You threatened to sue me when I wouldn't play along. And now that I'm succeeding somewhere else, suddenly I'm valuable?" He stood up. "I'm not interested." "At least look at the offer," Claire said. The compensation alone, I don't care about the compensation. I care about working with people who actually value me, not people who are trying to solve a PR problem. He pushed the document back across the table. You had 6 years to make this offer. You didn't. You waited until I was gone and proving you wrong. That tells me everything I need to know about what I'm worth to you. Robert's expression hardened slightly. You're making an emotional decision. I'm making a strategic one. The emotion just happens to align with the strategy. Adrian moved toward the door, stopped. You know what the difference is between here and Vale Capital? Celine hired me because she saw what I could do and wanted it for her firm. You're offering me a position because you're afraid of what I'm doing to yours. That's not value. That's fear. And I'm done being someone's crisis management. He left before any of them could respond, walked out of the building into the afternoon heat, and stood on the sidewalk for a moment just breathing. His phone buzzed. Celine. Celine. How'd it go? Adrian. They offered me senior director, big salary, own division, full autonomy. Celine. And you said? Adrian. No. Celine. Good. Come back to the office. I have something to show you. When Adrian got back, Celine was in her office with architectural plans spread across her desk. She looked up when he walked in. New office space. 3 floors, dedicated to the advisory division, your division. She pointed to sections of the blueprint. Team workspace here, individual offices for senior analysts here, conference facilities here. We're breaking ground next month. Adrian stared at the plans. This is because of 3 clients? This is because of the trajectory. We're not going to stay at 3 clients. We're going to scale to 30, then 50, then however many we can effectively serve. But that requires infrastructure, which means space, which means investment. She looked at him directly. You built something real, Adrian. Now we're building the structure to support it. What if I can't sustain it? What if we hit a ceiling? Then we adjust. But you don't plan for failure. You plan for success and build capacity to handle it. She rolled up one of the blueprints. Your old firm just offered you a big position because they're scared. You turned it down because you understand the difference between being valued and being needed to solve someone else's problem. That's good judgment. Now I need you to apply that same judgment to what comes next. Which is what? Scaling. You've proven you can execute. You've proven you can lead a small team. Now you need to prove you can build an entire division, hire more people, develop more sophisticated frameworks, handle clients at a level most firms can't touch. She paused. It's going to be harder than anything you've done so far. And you're going to fail sometimes, but that's the job. What if I fail badly? Then we figure out what went wrong and fix it. That's what actual partnership looks like. Shared risk, shared problem solving, shared success. She handed him one of the blueprints. Take this home, show it to your kids. Let them see what you're building. They should know that their father is creating something meaningful. That evening, Adrian spread the blueprint across the kitchen table while the kids finished dinner. Emma leaned over to look at it, tracing the lines with her finger. What is this? New office space for the division I'm running. You're running a whole division? Apparently. She looked at him with those serious eyes. That's a big deal. It is. Are you scared? Terrified. But you're doing it anyway? Yeah. Why? Adrian thought about how to answer that. About all the reasons that mattered. The money, the opportunity, the chance to build something real. But what he said was simpler. Because someone believed I could. And I want to prove she was right. Emma nodded like this made perfect sense. Okay, but you still have to be home for dinner. I know. And help with homework. I know that too. And not be stressed all the time. I'm working on that one. She went back to her homework, satisfied. Marcus, his son Marcus, climbed onto Adrian's lap to look at the blueprint more closely. Is this where you work? It's going to be. We're building it. Can we come see it? When it's done, yeah. Will it have a slide? Probably not. That's dumb. Offices should have slides. Sophie appeared on his other side. I think it looks nice, even without a slide. Adrian sat there with his kids clustered around him, looking at architectural plans for a future that was actually happening, and felt something settle in his chest. Not certainty. He was too experienced to confuse planning with certainty, but something close to it. Something like the belief that the risks he'd taken were actually going to pay off. The next few months moved quickly. The new office space broke ground. Adrian's team expanded from 6 analysts to 12, then to 18. They landed more clients, not all of them poached from his old firm, though enough that the industry noticed. Trade publications started running articles about Vail Capital's advisory division, about the aggressive new player reshaping client expectations, about Adrian Cross, the analyst who'd gone from invisible to indispensable in less than a year. His old firm continued its slow decline. Sarah Brennan left. Robert Kessler lasted 6 months before the board replaced him with someone from outside. The Whisper Network said they were considering selling to a larger group, that the damage was too extensive to repair. Adrian felt nothing about it. Not satisfaction, not vindication, not even pity. They'd made their choices. He'd made his. The market had rendered its verdict. What he did feel was the weight of what he was building, the responsibility of 18 people who depended on him for direction, for leadership, for the kind of guidance he'd never gotten himself. Some days he felt capable of it. Other days he felt like an imposter who'd somehow convinced everyone he knew what he was doing. Celine caught him in one of those moments, standing in the new office space still under construction, looking at the empty rooms that would soon hold his team. "You're spiraling," she said, appearing beside him. "How can you tell?" "Because you get very still when you're overthinking. Most people pace. You freeze. I'm just wondering if I'm actually ready for this." "You're not. Nobody is. That's not how growth works." She leaned against the wall. "You think I was ready to manage $40 billion? I wasn't, but I had to become ready by doing it. Same with you. You're going to build this division by building it, not by preparing until you feel confident enough. What if I make a mistake that hurts people? The team, the clients, you? Then we'll fix it." "Adrian, you need to stop treating every decision like it's permanent. Most things are reversible. Most mistakes are recoverable. The only thing that actually destroys you is refusing to try because you're afraid of failure." "When did you stop being afraid?" "Who said I stopped?" She smiled slightly. "I'm afraid all the time. I just don't let it make my decisions for me." The office space opened in early December. Adrian's team moved in the week before Christmas, transforming empty rooms into a functioning operation with the chaotic energy of people building something new. Emma's school had a winter concert that week. Adrian had it marked on his calendar in red, had confirmed with his team that he'd be leaving at 2, had told Celine explicitly that he wasn't available that afternoon. At 1:30, a client called with an emergency. Not a real emergency. There was no such thing as a real emergency in financial analysis, but the kind of urgent concern that clients treated like crisis because money made everything feel more critical. Adrian was on the phone when Jessica knocked on his office door, pointed at her watch. He nodded, wrapped up the call as quickly as he could, and grabbed his coat. "Where are you going?" Jessica asked. "The client wants a call back in 30 minutes. "I have somewhere I need to be. Handle it." "Handle it how?" "However you think is right. You're smart enough to figure it out. If you need me, text, but I'm not going to be available until after 4. He left before she could protest, drove faster than he should have through traffic that seemed designed to make him late, and made it to Emma's school with 2 minutes to spare. She was waiting in the hallway with her class, wearing the white shirt and black pants they'd picked out together specifically for this concert. When she saw him, her whole face changed. "You came." "Of course I came. I thought maybe work can wait. This can't." She smiled then, really smiled, and Adrian felt something in his chest that was worth more than any client meeting or professional victory ever could be. The concert was exactly what elementary school concerts always were: chaotic, slightly off-key, full of kids who were more enthusiastic than skilled. Emma sang her solo with serious concentration, hitting most of the notes, and Adrian watched her with the particular pride that comes from seeing your child do something brave. Afterward, in the parking lot, Emma said, "You're different now." "Different how?" "I don't know, less worried, maybe, like you're not always thinking about something else." "I'm trying to be better about that." "It's working." She paused. "I like your new job, not because of the money or whatever, but because you seem happier." "I am happier." "Good. You should be happy. You work hard." Adrian put his arm around her shoulders as they walked to the car. You know what I figured out recently? What? That working hard only matters if you're working towards something that actually makes your life better. I spent 6 years working hard at something that made me smaller. Now I'm working hard at something that makes me bigger. That's the difference. Emma thought about this. What made you bigger? The job or the person who gave it to you? Adrian stopped walking. His 9-year-old daughter had just articulated something he'd been trying to understand for months. Both. The job gave me opportunity, but the person gave me permission to believe I was worth it. So you needed both? Yeah. I needed both. That weekend, Celine invited Adrian and his kids to her beach house. Not for business, just for dinner. A casual evening that felt both generous and slightly surreal. The kids were overwhelmed by the house at first. Marcus ran from room to room examining everything. Sophie stood very still trying to absorb it all. Emma maintained her careful composure, but Adrian could see her eyes getting wider. Celine met them on the deck wearing jeans and a sweater, looking more relaxed than Adrian had ever seen her. "You must be Emma," she said, extending her hand. Emma shook it seriously. "And you're the person who hired my dad." "I am. Is that okay with you?" Emma considered this. "Yeah, he's happier now, so yes." "Good. Because I need him to stay happy. Unhappy employees don't do their best work." Marcus appeared at Celine's elbow. "Your house is huge. Do you have any kids?" "No." "Why not?" "Marcus," Adrian said, "that's not—" "It's fine," Celine said. "I don't have kids because I chose to focus on other things. Some people build families, some people build companies. I built a company." "Do you ever get lonely?" Sophie asked quietly. Celine looked at her for a moment. "Sometimes, but I have people I care about, friends, colleagues, people who matter. It's different than a family, but it's not empty." They ate dinner on the deck overlooking the ocean, fish that someone had prepared professionally, vegetables the kids actually ate, bread so good it didn't need butter. The twins told elaborate stories about school and their friends and the injustice of bedtimes. Emma asked Celine about finance, about markets, about how she'd known to start a company in the first place. "I didn't know," Celine said. "I just knew I was good at seeing things other people missed, so I built a business around that skill." "Is that what my dad does? See things other people miss?" "Exactly that. He sees risk where other people see safety. He sees patterns where other people see noise. That's rare. Rare enough to build a career on." After dinner, the kids played on the beach, while Adrian and Celine sat on the deck watching the sunset over the water. "Thank you for this," Adrian said. "For dinner, for everything. You didn't have to—" "Stop thanking me. I wanted to meet your kids. They're important to you, which means they're relevant to whether you're going to burn out or sustain. And from what I can see, they're smart, resilient, and grounded, which means you're doing something right. I'm trying. That's all anyone can do." She was quiet for a moment. "You know what impresses me most about you? It's not the analytical work, though that's exceptional. It's that you never tried to hide them. Your kids. Most people in your position would have pretended they didn't exist, would have created some fiction about being available 24/7. You just told me straight out that you had limitations, that you needed to leave on time, that you couldn't do late meetings, that your kids came first. You could have fired me for that. I could have, but why would I fire someone for being honest about their constraints? That's strategic clarity, not weakness. You knew your boundaries and communicated them. That's more valuable than someone who pretends they don't have any and then burns out 6 months in." Adrian watched his kids playing in the sand, silhouetted against the darkening sky. "I spent years feeling guilty about them, about not being able to work late, not being available for drinks with colleagues, missing events because I had to pick them up from school. Like having kids was this professional liability I had to apologize for. It's not a liability, it's a constraint that forces you to be efficient. You can't waste time because you don't have time to waste. You can't get lost in performative busy work because you have somewhere more important to be. That makes you sharper, not weaker. My old firm didn't see it that way. Your old firm didn't see a lot of things. That's why they're failing and we're not." She stood up. "Come on, let's get your kids home before they fall asleep on the beach." On the drive back, Emma said, "She's intense." "Yeah, she is. But in a good way. Like she actually means what she says." That's exactly right. Do you like working for her? I like working with her. There's a difference. Emma thought about this. She sees you, like actually sees you, not just what you can do for her. Adrian glanced at his daughter in the rearview mirror. When did you get so good at reading people? I've always been good at it. You just don't usually ask. By spring, the advisory division had grown to 25 people and was managing relationships with 18 major clients. The office space was full, functioning, alive with the energy of people building something that mattered. Adrian's old firm sold to a private equity group that immediately gutted the remaining staff and absorbed the client list. Todd Markham ended up at a smaller firm in Atlanta. Sarah Brennan moved to consulting. The whole organization just dissolved like it had never been anything substantial to begin with. Adrian read about it in a trade publication one morning and felt nothing except a vague sense of closure. That chapter was done, completely done. What wasn't done was the work in front of him. His team was preparing a pitch for their largest potential client yet, a multinational corporation with complex portfolio needs and a budget that dwarfed everything they'd handled before. Landing it would establish Vail Capital's advisory division as a serious player. Missing it would confirm they were talented but limited. The pitch was scheduled for a Friday morning. Adrian spent the week before rehearsing with his team, refining the presentation, stress testing their analysis to the point where Jessica finally told him to stop. It's good, Adrian. It's better than good. You need to trust that we're ready. What if we're not? Then we'll learn from it and do better next time. But we are ready. You just can't see it because you're too close. Thursday night, Adrian couldn't sleep. He lay in bed running through the presentation in his head, finding gaps that probably weren't there, imagining questions he couldn't answer, catastrophizing in the way anxiety turned possibility into disaster. At 1 a.m, his phone buzzed. Celine. Celine. You're awake and spiraling, I can tell. Adrian. How? Celine. Because I'm awake and spiraling. It's the night before a big pitch. Nobody sleeps. Adrian. What if we're not ready? Celine. You're ready. Your team is ready. The analysis is ready. The only thing that's not ready is your ability to trust that you've done the work. Adrian. What if I freeze up there? What if I can't answer their questions? Celine. Then Jessica or Marcus or one of the other brilliant people you hired will answer them. That's what a team is for. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be clear about what you know and honest about what you don't. Adrian. That's easier said than done. Celine. Everything worth doing is easier said than done. That's not a reason not to do it. Now stop reading this and go to sleep. You need to be sharp tomorrow. Adrian. Thank you for everything. I don't say that enough. Celine. You don't need to say it. You show it by doing exceptional work. That's enough. The pitch went better than Adrian expected and worse than he hoped, which meant it went exactly how these things always went. The client asked hard questions. The team answered most of them well. There were moments of genuine connection and moments of awkward silence. By the end, it was impossible to tell whether they'd landed it or not. We'll be making a decision within 2 weeks, the client's CFO said as they were packing up. Your analysis is thorough. We need to review it against the other proposals. Outside, walking to their cars, Jessica said, Did we get it? I have no idea, Adrian admitted. That's not helpful. It's honest. Sometimes you can't tell until you get the call. Marcus groaned. 2 weeks of waiting. That's torture. Welcome to the industry. Half of it is doing the work. Half of it is waiting to find out if the work mattered. The call came 9 days later. Adrian was in a meeting when his phone lit up with the client's number. He excused himself, stepped into the hallway, and answered. Adrian Cross. Mr. Cross, this is Catherine Ross from Meridian Industries. I wanted to let you know that we've completed our review of the proposals. Adrian's heart was doing something complicated. And? We'd like to move forward with Vail Capital. Your analysis was significantly more comprehensive than the alternatives, and your team's presentation demonstrated a depth of understanding we didn't see elsewhere. Something in Adrian's chest released. That's excellent news. Thank you. We'll have our legal team reach out about contracts, but I wanted to tell you directly, what you've built is impressive. We're looking forward to working together. After she hung up, Adrian stood in the hallway for a moment just breathing. Then he walked back into the meeting where his team was pretending to focus on other work. "We got it," he said. The room erupted. Jessica hugged Marcus. Someone started clapping. The energy shifted from nervous tension to celebration so quickly it was almost disorienting. Celine appeared in the doorway. "I heard. Congratulations." "Thank you for believing we could do this." "I didn't believe you could do this. I knew you could. There's a difference." She looked at the team. "This is what happens when you refuse to compromise quality. This is what happens when you build something real instead of performing competence. Remember this feeling. This is the standard now." That evening, Adrian took his kids out for dinner. Not to celebrate the client win, though that was part of it, but because it was Friday and they deserved his full attention. At the restaurant, Emma said, "You seem happy." "I am happy." "Because of work?" "Because of a lot of things. Work is good. You guys are good. Life is good." "It wasn't always," she said quietly. "No, it wasn't. But it is now." Sophie leaned against his shoulder. "Are we going to move? To a bigger apartment?" Adrian had been thinking about this. The money was real now, sustainable, the kind of income that actually changed circumstances instead of just making them slightly more manageable. "Maybe. Would you want to?" "I don't know. I like our apartment." "But it would be nice to have more space," Emma said. "And maybe my own room?" "We can look," Adrian said. See what's out there, but we're not in a rush. We're okay where we are." Marcus was focused on his French fries, but looked up suddenly. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy." "Are you going to marry that lady? The one with the big house?" Adrian almost choked on his water. "What?" "No, Celine is my boss, my colleague, no. But she's nice," Sophie said, "and she likes you." "She respects my work. That's different than... We're friends. Professional friends." Emma was watching him with those careful eyes. "But you like her." "Of course I like her. She changed my life. But that doesn't mean we're not... It's complicated." "Adults always say things are complicated when they don't want to explain them," Emma observed. "Sometimes things actually are complicated. Or sometimes you're just scared." Adrian looked at his 9-year-old daughter, this person who saw through every defense he tried to construct. "Maybe both." "You should tell her," Emma said simply. "If you like her, you should tell her. That's what you always tell us to do. Be honest about how we feel. It's different when you're an adult." "No, it's not. It's just scarier." That night, after the kids were asleep, Adrian sat on his small balcony looking out at the city and thinking about what Emma had said. Did he have feelings for Celine that went beyond professional respect? Maybe. Probably. Yes. But acknowledging it felt dangerous. She was his boss, his mentor, the person who'd saved him from a career that was suffocating him. Risking that relationship for something uncertain felt like the worst kind of gambling. His phone buzzed. "Celine." "Celine. Heard the team is celebrating. You're not with them?" Adrian. "Took my kids to dinner instead." Celine. "Good priorities." Adrian. "They asked if I was going to marry you." Celine. "What did you say?" Adrian. "That it was complicated." Celine. "Is it?" Adrian stared at that message for a long time, then typed, "I don't know. Is it?" Celine. "Come to the beach house tomorrow. We should talk." Adrian. "About work?" Celine. "About whatever needs to be talked about." Saturday morning, he dropped the kids at Marissa's. She'd agreed to watch them for the afternoon, and drove to Celine's beach house with absolutely no idea what was about to happen. She was waiting on the deck, coffee in hand, wearing jeans and a loose shirt that made her look younger than she usually did in the office. "Thanks for coming," she said. "Thanks for inviting me." He sat down in the chair across from her. "So, what do we need to talk about?" "The fact that we've been dancing around something for months and pretending we're not." "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do. You're brilliant at reading data, Adrian. Don't pretend you can't read people." She set down her coffee. "I hired you because you're exceptional at what you do." "That's still true. But somewhere in the last 6 months, it became more than professional respect. And I think you feel it too." Adrian's heart was doing something complicated. You're my boss. I am, which makes this messy. But pretending it doesn't exist doesn't make it go away. What if we mess this up? What if trying to be something more destroys what we already have? That's possible. It's also possible that what we already have is strong enough to handle being more. She looked at him directly. I'm not good at this. Relationships, emotional vulnerability, any of it. I built my life around work because work makes sense and people don't. But you make sense to me. The way you think, the way you prioritize, the way you show up every day trying to be better than you were yesterday. That makes sense. I have 3 kids, Celine. I have responsibilities and complications and a life that doesn't leave room for easy. I know. I've known from the beginning. That's not a deterrent. That's part of who you are. She paused. I'm not asking you to have all the answers right now. I'm just asking if you feel what I feel. If there's something here worth exploring. Adrian looked at her. This woman who'd seen him when no one else did, who'd bet on him when it wasn't safe, who'd built space in her life and her company for him to become who he was capable of being. Yeah, there's something here. Okay, so what do we do about it? We're careful. We're honest. We don't let it compromise the work or the team or anything we've built. And we see if whatever this is can exist alongside everything else. That sounds reasonable. It does. Which means it's probably going to be harder than we think. Celine smiled. Most things worth doing are. They talked for hours after that, sitting on the deck while the sun tracked across the sky, working through logistics and boundaries and all the practical details that relationships required when they existed in professional contexts. It wasn't romantic in any traditional sense. No declarations, no grand gestures, just 2 analytical minds trying to map a path through complicated territory. But it felt right. More right than Adrian had expected. When he left that evening, Celine walked him to his car. Thank you for being honest, she said, about how you feel, about your concerns, all of it. Thank you for not making this weirder than it already is. It's going to be weird sometimes. We'll figure it out. She kissed him then, just briefly, just enough to make it real. Adrian drove home with his head spinning and his heart doing something he hadn't felt in years. Hope, maybe. Or possibility. Or just the simple truth that sometimes the right person showed up at exactly the moment you needed them, and if you were brave enough to see it clearly, everything changed. Over the next few months, Adrian and Celine figured out how to exist in 2 spaces simultaneously, professional colleagues and something more personal. It wasn't always smooth. There were moments of tension when work priorities clashed with relationship needs, times when the boundaries felt impossibly blurred, but they worked through it with the same analytical rigor they brought to everything else. They communicated clearly, adjusted when something wasn't working, and maintained the fundamental respect that had drawn them together in the first place. The kids took it surprisingly well. Emma was cautiously approving. The twins thought it was funny that their dad was dating his boss. Marissa, his neighbor, just smiled and said she'd seen it coming months ago. At work, the advisory division continued to grow. They brought on more clients, hired more staff, built frameworks that other firms started trying to copy. Adrian's reputation in the industry shifted from that guy who left Mitchell's firm to one of the best analytical minds in finance. Trade publications ran profiles. Competitors tried to poach his team members. He said no to all of it, the interview requests, the speaking opportunities, the chance to build his personal brand separate from Vail Capital, because the work mattered more than the recognition, and the team mattered more than his ego. One evening, almost a year after he'd started at Vail Capital, Adrian stood in the new office space watching his team work through a complex client problem. Jessica was leading the discussion, Marcus was challenging her assumptions, other analysts were contributing ideas that Adrian hadn't considered. They didn't need him to solve it. They needed him to create space for them to solve it themselves. Celine appeared beside him. They're good. They're excellent. Better than I was at their age. That's what good leadership looks like. Building people who surpass you. I don't know if I'm actually a good leader. I'm still making it up most of the time. That never stops. You just get better at improvising. She was quiet for a moment. Your old firm officially closed last week. Complete dissolution. Adrian processed this. I heard rumors, didn't realize it was final. It is. Private equity group sold off the assets, terminated the remaining staff, shut down the operation, like it never existed. How do you feel about that? Nothing, mostly. They made choices that destroyed them. I made choices that built this. The market doesn't care about intentions or legacy, just results. Do you think I would have ended up the same way if I'd stayed? Terminated when they sold? Definitely. You were valuable to them only as leverage. When that didn't work, you were disposable. She paused. But you didn't stay. You chose something different. That's what matters. Adrian thought about the person he'd been a year ago. Invisible, exhausted, quietly disappearing inside a career that would have eventually consumed him. Then he looked at what he'd become. A leader, a colleague, someone building something real. The difference wasn't just the job. It was the choice to see himself clearly enough to demand better. That weekend he took his kids to look at apartments. Not because they had to move, the old place was fine, manageable, but because they could. Because having space to breathe was worth the disruption of changing locations. They found a 3-bedroom in a better neighborhood, close to better schools, with actual separate rooms for Emma and the twins. The rent was higher, but not impossible. The space felt like a life that had room for expansion instead of constant compression. "This one," Emma said, standing in the living room that got afternoon light. "This feels right." Adrian signed the lease that afternoon. Moving day was chaos. Boxes everywhere, furniture that didn't quite fit, the twins running through empty rooms making echo sounds. But it was good chaos, the kind that came from building instead of breaking down. Celine showed up in the afternoon with pizza and wine and the practical help of someone who understood that moving was exhausting. "You didn't have to come," Adrian said. "I wanted to. Your kids should see that the person you're dating is willing to show up for the hard stuff, not just the easy parts." Emma, overhearing this, smiled. "I like her, Dad." "Me too," Adrian said. That evening, after everything was moved and the kids were asleep in their new rooms, Adrian sat on the small balcony of the new apartment and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there was the building where he'd spent 6 years being invisible. Somewhere else was the office where he'd built something that mattered. The distance between those two places was measured in more than geography. It was measured in courage and choice, and the willingness to see himself clearly enough to demand what he deserved. His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Unknown. "Heard you're doing well. Good for you." Todd Adrian stared at it for a moment, then deleted it without responding. That chapter was done, completely done. He went inside, checked on his kids one more time, and found Celine in the kitchen organizing dishes that didn't need organizing. "You okay?" he asked. "Just thinking about how much can change in a year." "Good changes or hard changes?" "Both, mostly good." She looked at him. "You know what I realized today? Watching you with your kids, seeing this life you've built, I was wrong about something." "What?" "I thought I'd chosen between building a company and building a family, that they were mutually exclusive. But watching you balance both, not perfectly but successfully, makes me think maybe I just didn't know how to do both, or wasn't willing to try. You could still try, if you wanted to." "Maybe. But right now I'm pretty content being part of your family, in whatever capacity makes sense." She smiled slightly. "Your kids are good people. You did that. They did that themselves. I just tried not to screw it up too badly." "Same thing." Later, lying in bed in his new apartment with Celine asleep beside him and his kids safe in rooms down the hall, Adrian thought about the moment in the elevator when his whole life had changed. When Celine had taken his hand in front of everyone who'd ever ignored him and chosen to see him clearly. That moment hadn't saved him. He'd saved himself by choosing to believe he was worth saving. But she'd made the choice possible by showing him what it looked like when someone actually valued what he brought instead of just taking from it. The fear hadn't disappeared. He's still worried about failing his team, about disappointing clients, about being exposed as someone who didn't actually know what he was doing. But the fear didn't make his decisions anymore. And that was everything. Sunday afternoon, he took the kids to the park. Their park. The one near the old apartment that they'd insisted was still their park, even though they'd moved. They ran and played and fought over the swings with the comfortable chaos of children who felt secure enough to be ridiculous. Adrian sat on the bench watching them, present and focused, and grateful for this moment that wasn't complicated or professional or measured against any standard, except the simple truth that his kids were happy and he was there to see it. Emma came over after a while, sweaty and breathing hard, and sat down beside him. "I like our new place," she said. "Yeah? Yeah. It feels like we're not waiting anymore." Waiting for what? For things to get better, for you to stop being stressed, for life to not be so tight all the time. She leaned against his shoulder. "It feels like we're actually living now, instead of just surviving." Adrian put his arm around her, this person who saw everything and understood more than she should have to at 9 years old. "You're right. We are living now, finally." "Good. Because you're a lot more fun when you're not worried all the time." "I'll try to remember that." She ran off to play again, leaving Adrian alone with his thoughts and the afternoon sun and the sound of his children laughing. He pulled out his phone, looked at the message Celine had sent that morning. "Proud of you, for everything you've built, for everything you've become." He typed back, "Couldn't have done it without you." Celine, "Yes, you could have. You just didn't know it yet. I just helped you see clearly." Adrian, "Thank you for that, for seeing me." Celine, "Thank you for being worth seeing." Adrian put his phone away and sat in the sun, watching his kids play, feeling the weight of everything that had changed and everything that hadn't. The work would still be hard. The balance would still be difficult. Fear would still show up at inconvenient moments. But he'd learned the truth that mattered most. The right life didn't arrive when the fear disappeared. It began when you chose to move forward while still carrying it. And somewhere in that choice, in the daily decision to show up, to try, to build something real despite the uncertainty, was where everything that actually mattered lived. Adrian sat there until the sun started to set, until his kids were tired and ready to go home, until the day settled into evening and he could feel in his bones that he'd built something sustainable. Not perfect, never perfect, but real, and breathing, and his, and that was enough.